Chapter 1225. The group checked their map and began making their way northwards as quickly as they could. Dash were alive. Dash few. That was quite the explosion. The individuals with Gustav wiped dust off their body as they stood to their feet. They were on the other side of the mountain, and although a hole was blasted through to help them escape, they had nearly gotten buried in. FYI, Gustav and Angie pulled out the last individual in their group from the sand coverings, who also began clearing the dust from their body. According to the agreement Gustav had with the others who had joined them, they each owed Gustav an attack from their Eye of Bracelet. Gustav had made one of them use an attack from their bracelet to create an opening for them to escape. Before the participant made use of it, Gustav instructed everyone to hold on to the participant in front of them, so it would make it easier to get pulled out if the ones behind got buried, since the ceiling of the hole they were trapped in would most likely cave in. Fortunately, things had gone exactly as Gustav predicted, and everyone survived, but now they needed to get out of here. "Let's go," Gustav voiced before turning around and running off. The group followed right after him. They hurriedly moved at fast pace, which made sinking into the ground avoidable. About 20 minutes later, the group had arrived at the outskirts of the sinking highlands. They were only a mile away from the path that led to the yellow zone they were heading to at this point. They had managed to avoid a couple more beasts they came across along the way. Fortunately, these beasts didn't notice them and couldn't sense their presence when they hid from sight, so they were able to take detours around. "Are we gonna wait for them?" Matilda questioned as they arrived on Sloppy Plain. "It wouldn't be wise to do so. We're practically out in the open, so avoiding beasts here would be close to impossible," Gustav responded as they kept making their way forward. "But what if they need help? Shouldn't we check for them at least? They may still be back there," Angie voiced with a tone of worry. "We can't. We have to trust that they'll be fine, and if they're not, we cannot jeopardize more group members." Gustav shook his head. His thought process was, even if they got caught by any of the beasts and lost all their life points, they would just get disqualified and teleported out of the sixth disc. So long as the others from Earth Group were still safe, they would still be participating in the challenge. Since it was a survival challenge, a planet group wouldn't be disqualified unless all its 20 participants lost their life points. Gustav's decision to split them was also based on all of these. "They'll meet us on the charred wasteland then," Falco noted. The group continued to head forward along this sloppy path. Although visibility in the Beast Haven was limited, the current location happened to be a wide open space, so they watched out for the others. Soon enough, they spotted a small group ahead of them, and Gustav was able to recognize the body features of some of them from behind. Since the group was trying to maintain quietness so as not to draw any beasts to themselves, they chose not to call out to them. Gustav could tell that those were the participants that went with Eldris. He had used this to confirm Eldris and the rest's safety, but he was still unaware about that of Indrix. The group had already spent over 2 hours journeying from the heaven-piercing rock region to their current location. This meant they had a little over 3 hours of life points left. They should have spent only 2 hours, but due to all of the disturbances they faced on the way, they spent longer. They continued to follow behind as silently as they could, heading down the sloppy path. "It's finally in sight," Angie announced after a couple of minutes. In the distance, the group could spot a tar-like terrain with dense purplish, dried-up-looking trees standing firmly in multiple areas. These trees looked extremely dried up with purplish outer covering, yet they had blood-red leaves sprouting from their branches. The ground of the tar-like terrain emitted a faint yellow glow, depicting that this was a yellow zone. They had finally arrived here. The charred wasteland. The map displayed its name as they approached it with expressions of relief. "Gustav," Eldris called from up ahead as the two groups finally reconnected with the exception of Indrix. "Glad to see that you got here safely," he said with a smile. Likewise, Gustav responded as they stepped onto the yellow zone. The instant the group finally stepped foot on the yellow zone, their Eye of Bracelets emitted a little glow as numbers appeared on its surface. Roalpha D Alpha Inuam 00017 points, plus 1 point. 00018 points, plus 1 point. Alpha D Alpha Theta Nu Epsilon, Theta M 00020 points, plus 1 point. Every second they spent in the yellow zone increased the life points displayed on their bracelet. Gustav calculated that they needed around 240 life points to be safe for the entire duration of the challenge. If they managed to fill up that much and found their way back to a green zone, they would be safe till the timer counted down completely. 4 minutes. Let's make sure to watch out for beasts. Gustav knew the vicinity was not safe, so even a single minute seemed like a stretch. About 1 minute in, they spotted a group approaching from up ahead. Indrik, looks like they're safe, Matilda voiced with a tone of relief. Indrik and the others from his side soon arrived, and the whole group of 50 were completely reunited. Some of them recounted their experiences, relaying how dangerous each of their predicaments were. 00127 points. Plus 1 point. Gustav stared at his eye of bracelet with a calm look, but internally he felt impatient. Only 2 minutes had gone by since they arrived here from the looks of things. It almost seemed like time had slowed down at the one moment he wanted it to be fast. His eyes suddenly knitted as the sound of loud footsteps drifted into their ears. The group turned around to stare in the direction of the incoming footsteps. As a group of alien participants appeared in their line of sight, the group emitted a look of relief. Looks like we're not the only ones who picked this place to recharge, Fildhor voiced. Run. The yell from one of the approaching group caused their already calm nerves to rise. What do you mean by, this was when they noticed that the approaching alien participants were not walking, instead they were running. Gustav's forehead scrunched as he set his sights on what lay behind the approaching alien participants. Go. Everyone move now. Gustav yelled as he turned eastwards. Oh shit. E yelled as he also spotted the multiple beasts chasing the participants from behind. The group quickly reacted by turning around and running as fast as their legs could take them. Erf! Loud cries were heard behind as it seemed that the beasts had caught up with some of the alien participants. Thum! A mechanical-looking ape-like creature leapt into the air and suddenly landed in the midst of Gustav and the others. Its red glowing eyes flashed with violence, leaving the participants with no time to react. Fuhum, Gustav lowered his body the instant this creature arrived in their midst, and the moment he did, a massive metallic fist swung past his head. Bang! The fist crashed into Yonda, who was directly behind him, causing his body to be forcefully thrown into the air. 100 life points. BS Tard. Yonda groaned. His life points were instantly deducted as his body slammed into another alien participant behind, causing them to be forcefully pushed backwards as well. How in the hell is this thing considered a beast? It's like an artificial intelligent death robot. E screamed as he kept running with a look of horror. Disperse, Gustav stated. The group understood exactly what this meant and quickly ran off in separate directions. The beastly robotic figure paused for a bit, staring at its targets that were escaping in different directions. Its violent, brimming red eyes flickered as it suddenly spread both of its arms in separate directions, which began increasing in length, while holes appeared on different parts of its body. Multiple mechanical arms phased out of these holes, increasing in length and speedily shooting in the direction of the escaping participants. Gustav and a few others managed to dodge as they descended, but about 6 participants were not so lucky. The multiple arms that had extended grabbed hold of them and yanked them towards the mechanical beast. Chapter 1226 The Precarious Situations. The multiple arms that had extended grabbed hold of them and yanked them towards the mechanical beast. Gustav resumed fleeing as this was the beast course of action. This beast wasn't the only one on their tail. Other beasts had began chasing after them, and these ones had flesh. If I'm gonna get disqualified here, I might as well make use of them. Yonda cursed as he tapped on his eye of bracelet. A mechanical arm was about to grab Finks when a massive green energy beam slammed into the mechanical beast, sending it flying across the air. Bang! That's what you get for messing with me, bastard! Yonda yelled with a look of delight as he lowered his left hand. The beasts in the vicinity were instantly alarmed by this action and turned to glare at him. Uh-oh. He turned around and began running. Some of the beasts instantly gave chase, while others still went after the rest of the participants in the vicinity. The mechanical beast jumped back to its feet after a few seconds with its entire body smoking. Grua! It growled, causing the entire vicinity to radiate loudly. That is going to attract more beasts. Keep running, Gustav voiced to the participants around him as they stormed off into the unknown. The participants who weren't able to escape the onslaught of the beasts made use of the attacks available in their Eye of Bracelet. Blasts rang out all across the charred wasteland. Unfortunately, some participants didn't get to use their attacks before the beast's ambush laid waste to all of their life points. Currently, a couple of participants in the charred wasteland had gotten disqualified from the attacks. However, this wasn't the only location where such scenario was playing out. Since only around 3 hours were left till the life points that were originally imbued in the Eye of Bracelet would be depleted, every single participant was currently on the move. After leaving the green zone, safety was no longer guaranteed for anyone. At this same moment, participants in multiple locations were getting jumped by all sorts of beasts that were kept here. Handler 1 hadn't given them much information on the types of beasts they'd encounter here, but he mentioned one in particular that they should be wary of. He mentioned that should they come across this one, disqualification is certain. However, on the bright side, it only lurked around the red zones. Gustav arrived under a canopy of rocks that were stuck in between the large walls of 2 mountains. The space underneath the rocks that had formed a sort of roofing was large enough to look like a passageway of sorts. The mountains on both sides had such steep surfaces that would make climbing an hassle and would also slow him down since supernatural strength was currently restricted. The best route forward was the path underneath the rocks that formed a roof in between the 2 steep mountains. The path was dark and even rougher, but Gustav didn't see a better option. It also seemed much better to move on a terrain that was well hidden than one in the open. How are we sure there are no beasts hiding in here? Angie questioned with a slightly worried look as they began treading this path. If there are any, well, feed E to them, Gustav voiced with an indifferent expression while stepping forward. Ha, nice joke, Gustav. E tried to keep his laughter down. I wasn't joking, Gustav said with a light chuckle while staring at E. He. Suddenly it's not so funny anymore. E paused while displaying his set of white teeth with a grimacing expression. Lighten up. Hi, Angie chuckled while tapping E as her face threatened to burst with laughter. This wasn't the time to be making jokes since they just got out of a precarious situation, but Gustav's short dialogue with E and the expression he displayed on his face after Gustav's statement was just so hilarious that Angie found it extremely difficult to hold back laughter. Yo, why can't we just feed Angie to the beasts instead of me? E complained while Angie kept laughing. Because she's my girlfriend. Come on, man. Brothers before? Don't you dare finish that sentence. The initially gloomy air and dreadful aura around had dissipated at this point due to Gustav and E's presence. Gustav, Angie, and E had ran off in the same direction during the scuffle with the beasts, so they just kept moving together at this point. It was unknown if the whole group, minus the ones who were already disqualified, would reunite. However, the green zone they were supposed to head to together was where this trio were currently headed. The triangular waterfalls, that was close. Timmy sat in a body of water while breathing heavily as the noise of water falling from the air reverberated across the vicinity. If we had been any slower, we would have gotten disqualified by now, Indrik, who seemed to be in a much calmer state, said with a look of relief. Just like how Gustav, Angie, and E had moved in the same direction, so did he and Timmy. Both of them were initially being chased by a beast who had specifically chosen to follow only them out of the many others. Timmy had cursed their luck repeatfly, as they nearly lost all of Outwheat the beast for long enough, till they arrived in a green zone. The direction they stormed off in happened to be very close to their life points due to this beast. Fortunately, they were able to outwheat the beast for long enough, till they arrived in a green zone. The direction they stormed off in happened to be very close to a green zone, so they were the first amongst the group to arrive in a green zone. This was the same green zone Gustav had picked that they would head to after stacking up enough life points in the yellow zone. The triangular waterfalls. This location happened to have a small circular breach in space a couple thousand feet above. The breach happened to be the source of the waterfall, which descended upon the place in the form of a triangle. If one were to look at this location from afar, the triangular descent of the waterfall seemed quite spectacular. Its tip pierced the skies while its lower parts spread like the tail of the peacock, cascading down with intensity that defied the laws of physics. This, of course, had formed a body of water which currently emitted a green glow, depicting that this was a green zone. There was no danger staying in the water body since it was quite shallow. Even while sitting in it, the surface of the water body only reached Timmy's belly area. Will the others be fine? am a little worried, Timmy voiced as he sat upright. That isn't what we should be worrying about right now, Indrik replied while looking around. Timmy too had noticed it at this point and squinted his eyes in suspicion. Surrounding the body of water were a couple of beasts who stayed put. They had kept some distance between themselves and the entry point of the green zone, but they remained in place like guards. It almost felt like they knew exactly what was going on. If these beasts stay here, we won't be able to leave the green zone, Timmy voiced out. And we only have enough life points to last us for another 1 day, Indrik stated. They would get disqualified if the beasts stayed here for longer than their life points could sustain them. They definitely can't stay here for an entire day, right? Timmy said with a look of hope. I don't know about that. They seem intelligent, Indrik responded while pointing in a direction. Right before their very eyes, a beast smiled at them while shooting them a condescending gaze. Timmy gulped down saliva. We might be screwed. It looked like the creatures were going to stick around knowing that staying in the green zone would cause them to run out of life points, and coming out would mean facing an onslaught from them. It was a lose-lose situation. To make matters worse, more beasts kept arriving as time passed. What do we do? Timmy asked. For now, we wait, Indrik voiced in response. It's going to take us another 3 hours of non-stop moving to get there, E voiced with a slightly disturbed look as he stared at the map. They were currently traversing across an area with uncountable number of mammoth, pot-sized holes on the ground. They of course avoiding falling into the holes as they walked in their midst. I know, but right now we're in danger until we get to a green zone. If the others are there, we could all move together in large numbers. Gustav still felt that moving in large numbers would make it easier to have fodder in precarious situations. The large numbers quite literally saved them in the charred wasteland, since things would be way worse if Earth participants had gone alone. They might have gotten wiped out there. Chapter 12:27 Difficult Decision. The large numbers quite literally saved them in the charred wasteland, since things would be way worse if Earth participants had gone alone. They might have been all wiped out there. A yellow zone is 2 hours away. Wouldn't it be more sensible to head there instead and gather enough points? Angie voiced out what was on EE's mind. Exactly, EE stated. Yes, but then it would be safer if we reunited with the others and then went there, Gustav responded. But you said that so long as any one of us managed to remain, would still be fine as a group. We don't even know if the others made it there. Wouldn't it be a waste to head there and meet it empty only for us to double back to the closest yellow zone, which would now take us 5 hours if our journey is uninterrupted? Angie voiced out lengthily. You make a good point, but like I said, safety. If we're the only ones left, heading to the yellow zone immediately might not be the best option. It would be better to find a safe haven and then make proper infallible plans before heading out, but like you said, the time well spent doubling back would increase them. Gustav had to admit that Angie was making sense, but it was really a tough decision. If they headed left now, after 3 hours of uninterrupted hiking, they'd arrive at the closest green zone. However, if they headed right, after 2 hours of uninterrupted hiking, they would arrive in another yellow zone. The choice had to be made now. He wasn't even aware that she was conscious or would be able to see through the structure and discover his existence. It took him completely by surprise. Stop whatever it is you're doing and let me go, Gustav spoke in his mind. Please save me. I'll free you if you promise to save me, the Diaperonian voiced. Let me go now while you still have the chance. You can get yourself out of whatever pickle you got yourself into. It is none of my business, Gustav replied. Please save me. They will turn me into a sacrifice. Please save me. 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 Her voice kept ringing in Gustav's head, causing him headache. His face squeezed up with annoyance. Enough? Gustav yelled as a small pink and reddish glow emitted from his being. Fisk. He was instantly freed from the hold of the Diaperonian. You just ruined your chances of getting saved. Do it yourself, Gustav stated before stamping an invisibility button on his forehead. Cognitive concealment has been activated. He tapped the button on his forehead after activating cognitive concealment, causing his entire body to disappear as he turned invisible. Are you truly not going to save her? The system inquired. Why should I? Gustav said internally before swooping downwards. Don't be reckless like the last time, the system voiced. No worries, this time there isn't a crazy internal structure with unexpected gravitational laws. Gustav was relieved that it seemed easier than the last time. Upon getting close to the ground, he hovered slightly over it, flying forward into the massive temple. More statues bearing semblance to that of the one above could be seen placed in different parts of the temple interior. Although smaller in size, they seemed to be arranged in a way meant to beautify the temple. However, some of these statues were in compromising positions, some with weapons jarring through their head or chest. Real internal organs planted in different corners as well. Gustav could easily tell. Weird rocks that Gustav had never seen before could also be spotted, which made him wonder how their sense of beautification worked. Any normal person that stumbled into this temple would be scared out of their wits instead of standing there and praising the design. Gustav immediately arrived before the altar area after avoiding the multiple creatures moving about the place. The system had once again revealed the name of this species to Gustav, but he wasn't interested in that right now. He just wanted to get the Viander egg and move out of this territory as soon as possible. I'll alert these creatures about your existence if you don't help me right now. He suddenly heard the voice of the Diaperonian in his mind the instant he reached out to touch the Viander egg. She looked even more slimy and gooey in closer proximity. Gustav only took a glance at her and the binds surrounding her figure. No, they'll be out of here before they can even do anything, Gustav responded while grabbing the Viander egg. Please, I'll owe you one. I'm a princess, I'll give something back in return. Anything you want, the Diaperonian participant begged. Why can't you just slither your way out of that thing? You're practically liquid, Gustav questioned. The binds stop me from dematerializing, she voiced. I promise to do anything. Please just free me, she added. Gustav paused at this point. Anything? He questioned internally. Yes, anything. You have my word, she voiced. You have limited time before they discover your presence, the system reminded. We have a deal, Gustav said internally before letting go of the Viander egg. Didn't you say you weren't going to help her? The system wanted to face-bomb at this point. Gustav ignored the system and stared at the invisible lines surrounding the Diaperonian who was still bound. He had seen the lines around her when he activated God Eyes initially and assumed it was some kind of trigger, but didn't understand why they didn't put it around the egg. The lines are ritualistic design which would have sucked out her life force upon activation, the system stated. Looks like it's not a trigger like I thought. Explains why they didn't put it around the egg. Are they really that confident that no one would be able to get it? Gustav wondered internally. It would still cause a trigger if you tried to save her though, the system voiced. Yeah, they'll just disintegrate it then, Gustav decided while activating atomic manipulation. Atomic manipulation has been activated. He tapped his right feet on the altar, and a milky glowing line spread from his feet to the lines surrounding the Diaperonian. A circular decline was instantly formed on the altar. The ritualistic lines had completely disappeared. However, the creatures in the vicinity had been alerted. Gustav was super quick to have already grabbed the egg and the Diaperonian before flying upwards. Bang! He broke through the roof of the temple-like platform instantly, however. Flyyi. The moment he ascended about 50 feet above the ground, the Diaperonian suddenly dematerialized despite the binds surrounding her body. The occurrence took Gustav by mistake, and before he knew it, she was wrapped around his right arm and extending further to the rest of his body. Thai. Multiple outbursts of greenish energy surrounded the entire vicinity at once, causing Gustav to only see a world of green before he began falling to the ground. What the hell is this? Gustav voiced as a barrier suddenly appeared around him while he fell to his knees. Hi. The Diaperonian began laughing hysterically in his mind, while Gustav struggled to break free, but he couldn't get off his knees. Step, 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 step. Multiple of the green armored creatures with weapons stepped towards the barrier with cold looks. You fell into our trap, thieving scum, one of the Zergs stated as he arrived before the barrier. He happened to be around 20 feet tall with a massive club-like weapon in his grasp. What is this? Cosmic superiority? Not quite, it feels different, Gustav questioned internally with his forehead creasing. His body wasn't listening to his commands, and this wasn't like the hold the Diaperonian had on his body earlier. That power made him unable to move, but this power was compelling him to kneel. Looking upwards, Gustav could see the upside-down horn on the scalp of the Zerg glowing a bright green light. However, it wasn't just him. Other Zergs in the vicinity had the same green glow, and it seemed to have set up the barrier surrounding Gustav. The Diaperonian goose slid down from his arm and moved across the ground towards the largest Zerg. "Good job, Finna," the Zerg stated as the ashy slime arrived before him before getting sucked into the upside-down horn on his forehead. A participant working with one of the creatures down here? This didn't make any sense to Gustav. The binds which were supposed to stop her from dematerializing seemed to have been a fluke, and she could have dematerialized any time she wanted. Gustav had been successfully fooled. These creatures were truly intelligent, but a lot still wasn't adding up. "I found Finna and made her my slave," the 20 feet tall Zerg began stating upon seeing the look of confusion on Gustav's face. After saying a couple of things, Gustav now understood everything. The Zergs were aware that someone was going to try and steal their Viander egg, and from the looks of things he wasn't the first. The power of the chief of the Zerg's upside-down horn lets him bring back to life someone and make them his slave. He apparently found the corpse of Finna, a Diaperonian participant somewhere unknown, and brought her back to life as his slave. Being her master, he UNDSSS 2 reasons. Bad matchup, and that's their captain, Gustav replied. "Oh," Timmy voiced. "Will you be going then?" "Nah, I have a better matchup." "Elevera, you're up," Gustav announced. Elevera's face turned focused as she heard this. "How far do I have to go?" She wanted to know if it was necessary to go all out. Gustav had told everyone initially that they wouldn't be displaying all of their strength from the start, but eventually they would go all out. "Just make sure you get to the 9th river," Gustav instructed. Elevera nodded and began heading forward. The grounds EE destroyed initially had been fixed and new rivers were now positioned there. As Elevera arrived before the first river, the Anusa relic appeared before her, and she reached out to grab it. A few moments later, she was holding onto a massive spear with a fiery purplish flame at its tip. Elevera stared at her weapon with a look of satisfaction before pointing it at the river before her. Her entire figure was soon emitting a bright purplish glow as the ground began to quake. On the other side, Captain Shumi held on to what looked like a massive cannon. It was 4 times her size, yet she held it above her like it was nothing while pouring energy into it. A couple of moments later, they both took action. Boom! A shot was released from the cannon, which flew into the river ahead and exploded with intensity. Meanwhile, Elevera, who had levitated to almost 100 feet height, flung the spear in her grasp downwards. Flyei, a purplish streak cut through the air as it bore through the river instantly, emitting a shockwave that caused the entire river to be emptied. Both opponents went through the 1st to 6th river, performing the same actions and clearing it out. Her strength should be reaching its limits after this river, Captain Shumi thought as she gave it her all and cleared the 7th river as well. The purplish aura surrounding Elevera climbed as she flung down her spear from the air once more. Bang! The entire river was emptied once again effortlessly as cracks spread across the floor of the river. Chapter 1228. Above the surface, right before their very eyes, which was filled with uttermost bewilderment, Gustav stood to his feet, no longer hindered by their abilities. "What? How are you doing this, thieving scum?" the chief of the Zergs voiced. "It's just a Yarky dupe," Gustav muttered as he stepped forward and grabbed the Viander egg. Gustav barely activated cosmic superiority since he didn't want to bring any attention to himself. Exuding a little bit of its energy was enough to break out of the hold of the Zerg's power. "Dash, Yarky? Dash, that creature is dangerous, chief. Dash, what is this?" The Zergs were already astonished and wary upon witnessing Gustav's feat, but in the next instant he suddenly disappeared from sight. Bang! A loud crash assaulted their ears as the barrier blasted to smithereens. The Zergs were unable to process things very quickly despite their powerful ability. Their eyes widened when they spotted Gustav in the sky with their chief in his grasp, powerless. The club-like weapon in his grasp had fallen to the ground as well. "Chief!" They yelled with looks of horror as they began throwing weapons upwards. "LTS, time to send you to the afterlife." A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as his frame cut across the air with intense speed. Despite his size, The chief of the Zergs struggled powerlessly with Gustav's right hand holding tightly onto his throat. "Please spare me. You can have the egg," the chief pleaded after seeing their immense difference in strength. "I already have the egg. You don't strike a good bargain," Gustav stated as his fingers tightened around the neck of the chief, which was very small in comparison to his size. "Erfurg, I have a better bargain pl. Ease, spree ee." The chief of the Zergs pleaded. "I don't want to hear it. Greed got me into this situation. Your power will be enough compensation," Gustav replied as he prepared to extract the chief's ability. "MP. I have a MAP. I see in HLPYOU. GTMOREEGGS." The chief kept struggling to speak. "He says he has a map," the system voiced. "I already know my way around," Gustav replied. "You do, but you keep getting into these situations that delay you. Didn't you say you wanted to get out of here as soon as possible?" The system inquired. Gustav thought about it for a second. He was unaware of the abilities of the creatures here, so he kept getting into unfavorable situations. However, if a native of this part of the fourth disc helped him, things would become easier and he wouldn't get delayed by falling into unexpected situations again. "I guess you're right, but I really like their abilities though." Gustav reluctantly released his tight grip on the chief's throat. "You're not just going to give me a map, you will also stake the eggs for me," Gustav stated while still holding the chief up. I agree, but can my savior release our eggs since we will be helping you steal more?" the chief inquired. "You don't get to make demands besides. What do you guys even need them for?" Gustav questioned. "Please, savior. You might as well just slaughter us now if you still wish to take our egg," the chief pleaded. "Why is the Vinder egg so important to the creatures down here?" Gustav wondered internally with a slightly raised left brow. "Who knows?" The system answered like it was unaware too. "Very well then," Gustav voiced while turning around. FYI, he sped across the air once more and arrived above the territory of the Zergs who were still prancing around in despair. Gustav let go of the chief who fell from the aid and landed before his kin. "Chief!" the Zergs yelled in joy. "Now listen up." Gustav floated a few feet above the ground with a menacing gaze, causing the Zergs to shudder. They meekly fell to their knees and listened as Gustav made demands on what he wanted. The creatures would do anything to make sure their eggs were not taken from them, so they accepted Gustav's demand. They couldn't even disobey, even if they wanted to, since their chief already agreed. With the partnership, the Zergs informed Gustav of this part of the fourth disc properly. Apparently, it was a kind of dimension between the fourth and fifth disc, but they were still a part of planet Ozius. However, they weren't completely recognized by the major species existing on the surface of the discs. The Ozius. They were seen as less important and inferior, and the eggs happened to be what helped them evolve and grow as a species. Gustav still didn't really understand a couple of this about this whole dimension, but he had more knowledge about planet Ozius now. It was normal for a planet to have multiple species, especially one as massive as this. However, he didn't understand why the Ozius choose not to acknowledge the existences of the ones here. As he stayed longer, he realized the Zergs were more peaceful than they looked on the surface. Despite the chief's special ability to revive the dead with that upside-down horn of his and turn them to his slave, he didn't think of conquering more territories. This ability could change the tide of battles if he wanted to conquer even the surface, but the chief only wanted to protect his people. "This is the one we will be infiltrating second, the Bootfog territory. They have warping abilities and tend to set a lot of traps, but I can get you the egg without them ever knowing it." The chief spoke to Gustav after their first haul. They had already managed to get one Vinder egg in the last hour. It was so easy to get into the territory due to the help of the chief and get the egg out after replacing it with a dummy. This time Gustav didn't get into any scuffle. Chapter 12:29 Thurum. A jet of yellow flames bursted forth with intensity, slamming into the creature ahead and sending it flying. Tairea. The skeletal creature made loud noises as its wings and skull caught fire while it flapped away rapidly, trying to put it out. Alpha D Alpha Theta Nu Epsilon, but Gustav, Angie was nearly in tears. He would have wanted us to continue. "Let's go," he yelled once more, causing Angie to snap out of her reverie. She didn't want to disappoint Gustav and quickly straightened up. They both dashed forward together in the next instant before leaping toward the last golden board. Bam! They managed to make the jump and both moved towards the golden platform up ahead. The area Gustav had picked out for them to hide was only a few feet away at this point, so they hurried forward as quickly as they could. Saya! A sudden loud screech announced the approach of another of these skeletal flying beasts. Angie and were speeding forward as quickly as they could towards what looked like a gate made of golden rods up ahead. These golden rods were lined up in such a way that they had formed something like a gate before the entry point to a small space with a dead end. It was like a fairly spacious room. The spaces in between the rods were large enough for them to slither in, but with the beast chasing from behind, they might not get to it. Go, 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 Angie, said while pushing her forward as one of the skeetal creatures landed right behind them. It grabbed hold of before he could tap on his eye of bracelet, lifting him into the air as Angie fell forward, arriving before the gate-like area. She yelled with indignation while holding onto one of the golden bars for support. At this same moment, a blast of green energy shot forth from behind, ramming strongly into the creature in midair. "Siaya!" The skeletal beast cried in pain as it slammed into multiple golden poles ahead. It subconsciously let go of before tumbling towards the ground below. Bam! Landed back on the golden platform before the gate of rods up ahead with a look of relief. "We thought you were toast," voiced out at the incoming figure up behind. "I guess not," Gustav replied as he ran forward. "We need to go now," he said with a tone of urgency while helping up. Behind them was a flurry of the same type of creatures approaching, while ahead of them was a small space with golden-like gates, which was currently detaching from the platform they were standing on. The golden entrapment was always in a constant state of change, so their current position within it was not excluded from the change. Golden rods began to shoot upwards, while some curved, forming a different look. The platform they stood on began spreading in length, while Angie's position began shifting as the golden gate began moving anti-clockwise, along with the space they were supposed to hide in. "Get in now," Gustav yelled to Angie, who quickly reacted by slithering in through the spaces in the golden rods. Just as she did, the platform before the space got separated, giving Gustav and more distance to cover. Pa, pa, pa. As their feet drummed heavily on the platform, the creatures behind also sent out attacks, causing the path behind them to begin crumbling. "Jump!" Gustav yelled as they arrived at the ledge. "Thuum! Thuum!" They both leapt forward as the platform completely crumbled behind them due to the attacks. Gustav and managed to grab hold of the golden pole-like gate as it moved across the air while the structure was undergoing change. Their legs hung far above the ground as they kicked in mid-air repeatedly, trying to pull themselves up and slither through any of the spaces in between the golden poles. Angie helped them both by pulling upwards as much as she could since she was already inside the small space. "Phew, that was close," breathed in and out profusely as he laid on the floor of this moving space. Underneath his helm, sweat could be spotted on Gustav's face as he placed his back against the golden wall by the side and slumped down in tiredness. "How did you manage to survive that?" Angie voiced with a look of astonishment as she sat beside him. "Roelfedialfes inuam, I didn't fall off," Gustav replied with hurried breathing pattern. He was just as exhausted as It had been so long since he felt exhaustion of this level, he had nearly forgotten the feeling of powerlessness. When he got hit by the attack of the skeletal beast earlier, it looked like he fell off the platform, but he had managed to hold onto the ledge. It took all of his strength to pull himself back up after taking that sort of attack. Of course, it would have been way worse if they didn't have Teja's protective cover of the Eye of Bracelet, but it still felt extremely painful regardless. Fortunately, he managed to get back the time he did, or he would have been a goner. Now Gustav and Angie had made use of one of their attacks each, so they were down to 2 each. Gustav could feel his sight blurring as he kept breathing in and out profusely. What's wrong? He wondered as the environment suddenly began to give off a sense of vagueness. "Gustav, are you okay?" Sound had turned fleeting as his senses dulled and an impending feeling of doom assaulted his mind. Huff, huff, huff. Angie could see that from the irregular movement of his body as he sat in a voluntary state. Something was wrong. "Ee." Angie quickly called out to Ee with a worried expression. Ee skittled over and shook Gustav a couple of times while uttering words that Gustav was currently unable to pay attention to. Everything was fleeting at this moment except for the impending sense of doom. Afraid? Gustav's vision turned red for a bit before flashbacks played out in his mind. It's a panic attack. He's having a panic attack, E voiced with a tone of realization to Angie. What do we do? Angie's expression turned from troubled to immensely disturbed as she held onto Gustav's head and kept yelling words that Gustav couldn't hear. We can only try comforting him with words, but I'm not sure he can hear us, E stated. Gustav, listen to me. Everything is going to be fine, okay? I'm here. Angie voiced out loudly while holding his head. She proceeded to hug him to her body, placing his head right on her chest while patting his back softly and rhythmically. Gustav's body was still jerking back and forth due to his erratic breathing pattern, but soon he began to feel the sense of doom rescind. Pat. The gentle pats on his back slowly caused him to regain a bit of clarity as his mind, which was initially running with a lot of thoughts, began to calm. Like a baby who had relaxed in the arms of its mother, Gustav remained in place, laying on Angie as minutes went by. Phew! Ely relaxed as he noticed that Gustav had calmed and stood up to stare at the gate-like entry point of the small space. Bang! The instant he was 1 feet away, the massive skeletal face of a beast appeared. Its dark wings flapped repeatedly as its body floated before the structure. CEI. Upon releasing a loud scream, it began attacking the golden-colored gate like poles repeatedly. Clang. E quickly swerved out of the way as purplish arcs slammed against the poles, and some busted into the small space. Its claws repeatedly slashed against the gate-like poles, but there was no damage. However, didn't want the noise to attract the others, or have one of the residue energy from its attacks hit Gustav and Angie. He quickly stepped forward after moving out of the way initially. See! The skeletal beast screeched loudly again, causing its mouth to open wide as purplish light gathered within it. Ugly, your breath stinks. Do you use that to talk to your mother? Voiced as he tapped on his eye of bracelet. Black Bolt Transporter. The name of the attack appeared on EE's bracelet as he stretched forth his left arm. Towin. A black circular beam shot forward, encapsulating the entire of the creature ahead. The creature was startled and began attacking the circular black barrier surrounding it, frantically. However, this was to no avail as the space within the black beam shrinked and it ascended further into the air. Phew! The circular beam flew off into the distance with the beast within, returning a bit of tranquility to the environment. Alpha D Alpha Theta Theta Nu Epsilon. Sound of organs ripping and body parts splitting reverberated across the environment as this participant stabbed his multiple limbs into the bodies of menacingly large beasts. He arrived before one that was over 30 feet tall, throwing a fierce uppercut with 3 of his right arms. Roelfidi Alphes Inu Ombom. His entire body traveled upwards in speed with his arms bursting through the head of the creature instantaneously, leaving a large enough hole for him to fly through. 4 seconds. 3 seconds. Fountain of blood and brain matter splattered across the place as a timer counted down on this particular eye of bracelet. A large shadowy figure reaching over 100 feet in height suddenly appeared behind him as he raised one of his left hands. The large shadowy figure conjured a massive bluish glowing spear in the last 2 seconds, before passing it to the figure with multiple limbs. The participant held onto the 30 feet long glowing blue spear with 3 of its hands at once before flinging it forward with intense force. Thum! A shockwave spread from his location, sending a ripple of dust across the vicinity as the bluish spear shot out with immense speed. It phased through a lineup of beasts up ahead, causing them to disintegrate into blue light particles instantly. The spear made a C-turn after reaching a particular distance, stabbing into the rest of the beasts in the vicinity. 1 second, 0 second. In the next instant, the glowing spear vanished along with the dark shadowy figure hovering over the participant initially. The participants raised his arms slightly as he felt power leave his body. 10 seconds was enough, he voiced with a tone laced with pride while staring at the corpses that drenched the surface of this environment. He turned around and moved towards a small black crate up ahead. The instant arrived before it, he placed his left arm into it. Thry, a computerized sound rang out before he withdrew his hand. Attacks restocked, +1 extra attack. His multiple eyes had displayed hints of astonishment and excitement as he noticed the notification on his eye of bracelet. Things are about to get more interesting. Unlike these unworthy weaklings, I, the captain of the Draconites, shall not cower in the face of any adversity, even powerlessness. I shall bring the Beast Haven to its knees, Captain Strum stated with a short burst of laughter while turning around. He tapped on the map display on his eye of bracelet. Scarlet Canyon, the location that was displayed on the map as his current position showed that he was in a red zone. What he had come here for was unknown. However, what was known was how he had slaughtered over 200 beasts here since his arrival. Is this to say that he still had his supernatural abilities? No, that wasn't the case. Captain Strum had made use of 2 of his attacks before his arrival here. His last attack just happened to be one that displayed unlocking participant abilities for 10 seconds. He was allowed to use his supernatural abilities for 10 seconds due to this, and that was enough to lay waste to the entire region. He only came here to restock in the first place, ignoring that it would be packed with all sort of dangerous beasts. It was like Captain Strum was without fear or restraint despite losing the teammates who were initially around him earlier. Now that he had achieved his objective, he began making his way to the closest yellow zone. Now he had 4 attacks instead of 3 after restocking. Time went by very quickly, 23:45. 10, less than a day was left till the end of the Beast Haven Survival Challenge currently. At this point, over half of the participants had been disqualified. From the initial numbers of nearly 2,000, only a little over 600 were left. The challenge was filled with unexpected situations, and despite the participants receiving briefing before going in, it ended up being more crazy than anticipated. Some that had survived so far were lucky, since despite being capable, some participants had gotten disqualified due to unfortunate situations. Currently, many participants were unaware of one thing as they held on to whatever was left of their attacks as a last resort. His last attack in the Eye of Bracelet wasn't an attack. Instead, it was a 10 seconds temporary unlock of the restraints on their supernatural abilities. Those who has already made use of all their attacks were aware of these, but many others still held on to their last attack, not wishing to make use of it until they were in an inescapable situation. They were certainly in for a shock if they ever made use of it. Only Captain Strum was crazy enough to head to a red zone, so he was the only participant who would get the chance to unlock the restraints on his supernatural abilities twice. Chapter 1231. Only Captain Strum was crazy enough to head to a red zone, so he was the only participant who would get the chance to unlock the restraints on his supernatural abilities twice. Gustav peeked through the spaces in between the gate-like poles with keen eyes. Alpha D Alpha Theta Theta Nu Epsilon, I'm not entirely sure if it's a good idea to leave now, E voiced from the side. I agree with EE. We've already been here for so long and we survived. I'm sure we only need to be here for less than a day more before the challenge comes to an end, Angie voiced. Gustav had a look of contemplation as he turned to face them. You two certainly have a point, especially now since it looks like they have left. From Gustav's manner of speaking, it felt like there was a but coming. He turned to stare at the entry point barricaded by the gate like golden poles. This looks to me like we're at one of the edges of this yellow zone. The view through the spaces in between the bars showed that they were currently on the ground, and there was no crazy-looking structures and immensely long golden poles extending out of the ground up ahead. It looked like the constant transformation of the zone had put them in a position that was close to the edge of the zone and on the ground nonetheless. If any beast should wander past this zone by coincidence, we stand a high chance of being spotted, Gustav added. We could just wait till this part of the structure moves again, Angie stated. Gustav thought about it again for a couple of seconds. The structure had remained this way for the last hour, and he was starting to worry. According to the map, the direction they were currently facing would lead back to the region with holes all over the ground. This was the same direction they came from. Just as Gustav was about to make a decision, a small rumble caused him to pause in place. The space they were currently situated in began to move. They soon ascended as the entire structure began to undergo change once more. "There's our answer," Angie smiled while voicing out. "All right, I guess we can keep staying here," Gustav stated before sitting beside Angie. As the structure underwent change, the golden poles that had formed a gate before the entry point to this space all shifted away as well and got replaced with a massive golden board. In a couple of seconds, the entry point to the small space had been completely sealed without a single ray of lighting penetrating through. The internal structure of the small space became even more dimly lit than before. The trio could only see each other due to the sensors from the purple helm formed from the Eye of Bracelet. "Why does this place even exist?" Yi suddenly questioned. "What do you mean?" Angie inquired. Were the leaders of Ozius bored and decided they needed to create a beast haven for fun, then bring in all sorts of creatures? Yi elaborated. "That's true, even creating complex areas such as this within the beast haven as well, or maybe they just did this for Aesop." Angie's curiosity piqued after hearing Yi bring this up. "What do you think, Gus?" Yi asked. "I think." Gustav paused for a bit, causing both of them to stare in his direction with focused expressions as well as interest. "No matter how much we try, we want to understand what they were thinking when they created this," Gustav shrugged. They both drew back with a slight expression of disappointment. "I thought you were about to give me the answer, but I guess you're right," Yi voiced. "I don't have all the answers in the universe, but that's a pretty interesting thought you have there. Maybe we should ask the Ozus later." Gustav had a slight look of intrigue as he stated. "I'm leaning on boredom then," Angie voiced from the side. "For me, I'm leaning on Aesop," Yi said. They both called dibs on what the reason for the creation of the Beast Haven was and stared at Gustav, waiting for him to pick a side. "What about you, Gus?" Yi voiced. "None of the two," Gustav answered with a smirk. "Huh. I'm hinging on the fact that it has been in existence since and wasn't created due to boredom or Aesop. I'm betting on the fact that they use the Beast Haven for competitive competitions between natives or punishment for criminals." Gustav elaboration caused both of them to open their mouths. Roelfidialfes knew Omno that he mentioned this. It actually made sense. "Why didn't I think of this before?" E nearly cussed. "You were holding out on us before, right?" "Sneaky." Angie pinched Gustav's sides. "Ow, no haha," Gustav chuckled while responding. While this trio stayed in the confines of this enclosed space, the rest of the Beast Haven, with the exception of the green zones, were in hot waters. More participants were getting disqualified by the hour. If some participants were aware that these three managed to survive in a yellow zone and even stay there for over a day, they would have curse in anger. A lot of participants that had been disqualified got ambushed in yellow zones by beasts. If they didn't need to recharge their life points, they'd still be here, yet this trio recharged to the max and even hid within. Gustav, EE, and Angie engaged in different topics, uncaring of the situation of the Beast Haven. They were having a blast exchanging dialogues, and EE was clowning as usual, which caused occasional laughters from Angie and Gustav. 052:49. They had practically spent another day in the small space at this point, and were unaware of the current status of the challenge. However, they were sure that the challenge would most likely be coming to an end soon. During the second day they spent here, the structure had changed a couple times more. However, the space they hid within was still sealed at all corners without a single source of light. As they stayed waiting for the challenge to come to an end, the structure began moving again after a couple of minutes. EE exclaimed as he turned to the left side of the space, which was supposed to be a dead end. It suddenly detached in the next instant along with half of the small space. Thuririath. Clang. Clang. Loud metallic vibrations rang through the air as the golden bits of the space collided with some platforms up ahead and stuck to it. "Uh-oh, we're out in the open again," Angie voiced. Due to the detachment of half this space, they were currently wide in the open as the rest of the half where they sat and got moved across the golden entrapment. They could see the poles in the distance, as well as multiple other structures dividing and merging with another area. "I think we have to get out of here," E stated as he noticed the structure start moving at very quick pace. They wanted to get up, but soon lost their balance and fell back, ramming their bodies against the sealed part of the space. The now exposed space was no longer moving in unpredictable trajectories. It was now moving in a very straight line with the exposed part of the space pointing in a particular direction. Thwash, what laid ahead wasn't something that the trio would count as very accommodating, so they did their best to quickly jump to their feet and sped forward. Now, jump now, Gustav yelled as he arrived at the exposed ledge of the space. The trio quickly leapt forward from the fast-moving space. Thrybam, bam, bam. They landed on a golden platform about 7 feet lower than the height they jumped from. Fortunately, they managed to not fall off the platform, but the instant they looked up, think, 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 multiple horizontal line poles stabbed into the space they were initially hiding in, merging completely to it as it slowly began to take a different shape. If they were still within that space, they would have gotten impaled by the multiple golden rods. Now we're really out in the open, Gustav voiced. I don't see any beasts around, though, E said with knitted eyes. Don't jinx things again, Angie voiced from the side. Too late, Gustav stated while looking downwards. Angie and EE's hairs stood on end as they followed Gustav's line of sight with looks of terror. Ah shit, E voiced as he spotted the 6-limbed creature with a calabash-like upper body build. It stood just before the entrance area of the yellow zone. Chapter 1232, Ah shit, E voiced as he spotted the 6-limbed creature with a calabash-like upper body build. It was grayish in color with black dots all across its body, while its 6 limbs, which were connected to its lower body, looked like human arms, but with 6 fingers instead of 5. The creature size wasn't bigger than 9 feet. It was one of the smallest beasts they had encountered since they arrived here. Maybe it hasn't seen us. We can still get away unnoticed, E voiced with a low tone since they were currently hundreds of feet from the ground. It was almost like EE's last sentence attracted it as the creature just happened to look upwards in the next instant. Ryu! A loud and sharp whistle-like voice reverberated across the vicinity loudly as the beast spotted them. What the hell? E yelled as they all held their ears in pain while the platform they were currently standing on vibrated intensely. You just had to jinx it, didn't you? Gustav voiced. It's a small beast and it's just one. We can still get away. Immediately after E finished saying this, a loud rumbling assaulted their hearing. The group turned around to spot a horde of beasts similar in appearance to the one below them, approaching the golden entrapment from the south. Now we're in deep shit. This thing called the others here, E voiced with an expression of horror. The timer display showed that only around 50 minutes was left till the challenge would come to an end, but if they didn't move now, these beasts would get to them in less than a minute. Go! Gustav turned north and sped forward. Angie and EE followed after him and immediately jumped forward the instant they arrived at the ledge. The beasts approaching had began climbing upwards at very quick pace. It was obvious that they were incapable of flight, however. The 6 hand-like limbs attached to their lower bodies were extremely quick and tight-gripped, making it possible for the beasts' tight climb up very quickly. The golden rods shooting out of the ground were scaled very quickly, and many of the creatures arrived over 100 feet above in a couple of seconds. The trio were trying to make their way down, but these creatures were very quick. The first one who alerted the other was already ahead of them as it already climbed quickly close to their current height. Gustav and the others spotted it ahead, leaping from one vertically positioned golden rod to another as it headed in their direction. They were practically jumping from one golden platform to another headed in the direction the first beast was coming from. The instant arrived at an area of golden rods positoned vertically and horizontally, they began stepping forward slowly and carefully. However, at this same instant, the first beast reached the same height as them. It sped across the rods very quickly. Oh shit, E voiced as the creature leapt towards them. Sweewee, down, Gustav voiced and jumped from the horizontal golden rod they were currently walking on. The trio followed Gustav, wasting no time in jumping after him. The beast missed them as it leapt past their initial spot, landing on a golden platform ahead. After dropping past a certain point, Gustav grabbed an horizontal positioned rod tightly, causing his entire body to come to a stop. Angie and EE, who were falling from the air after him, were unaware of his plans before jumping. They only blindly followed him, not caring about what would happen. Gustav reached out and grabbed hold of EE's right arm. EE in turn reached out and grabbed Angie's, causing all three of them to be suspended in the air with Gustav's right arm doing all the work. Their abilities might have been restricted, but Gustav could still do this much. He groaned while pulling upwards with all his might. EE's right arm leveled with the golden pole as Gustav placed his hand right before it. He quickly wrapped his hand around the golden pole and pulled Angie upwards as well. They all climbed to the top of the horizontally inclined golden pole and began moving forward across it. As they were headed for the golden platform up ahead, the beast had arrived at the position the trio were initially. Ryu! The whistled voices of the beasts rang out again, and in unison this time upon spotting their preys below. The trio held their ears as they speedily made their way across, trying to get out of the zone as quickly as they could. The beasts began jumping from place to place as they made their way downwards again, not willing to let the trio get away. The trio arrived at a steep golden platform that extended to the bottom of the golden entrapment. Gustav wasted no time in diving forward and landing ahead before taking a crouch. Roelfadialfes, Inu Omi's entire figure, began sliding downwards at quick pace. Angie and E wasted no time in moving forward and sliding across the smoothened golden platform as the beasts also hurried down from the height they climbed to. Go, go, go! Gustav yelled as they arrived at the bottom. Their breaths were hurried and their hearts pumping with adrenaline as they charged out of the golden entrapment. They were still moving at human speed, but they had quickly made their way to the outskirts after running for some time. The unfathomable and inexplicable structured golden entrapment was now tens of feet behind them. However, the structure wasn't the only thing that was behind them. The incoming beasts clamored as they charged at their preys. There were over 100 of them chasing after the trio, and there was no doubt that they were faster as well. Should we split up? E questioned as they began to make their way across the sandy area with multiple holes in the ground. No, let's keep going, Gustav responded as they swerved across large holes to avoid falling in. The vicinity behind them had been shrouded in a cloud of dust due to the numbers of these beasts making their way forward at full speed. Bam! 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 Multiple of them fell into the holes positioned all across the vicinity, causing them to slow down. They're low-intelligence beasts, Gustav stated as they turned their necks to the side slightly and spotted the creatures tripping on themselves and falling into the holes around. If we're lucky enough, we can make it across before they catch up to us, E voiced. I'm not sure that kind of luck exists in reality, Gustav responded with a pessimistic tone. He was well aware that some of the beasts would still catch up to them very soon, since there was no way they'd all fall into holes. Alpha D Alpha Eta Theta Nu Epsilon, in a couple of minutes, they suddenly spotted a purplish fog up ahead. Is that? E squinted his eyes as he noticed the purplish fog closing in. It can't be. Angie's eyes showed a hint of defeat as skeletal faces with glowing purple eyes appeared within the fog. The situation immediately went from bad to worse as these beasts flew in their direction, while the other beasts with multiple lower limbs were still chasing from behind. The strong stench of dust in the air reeked ominously as the two different hordes of beasts sped towards the trio with obvious nefarious intentions. Gustav turned northwest with a still determined expression despite knowing it was an impossible situation. Looks like you'll have to use the rest of my attacks, he voiced. Angie and E turned in his direction, wanting to follow him, but he quickly yelled, "Don't follow me, E." He gave E a look and E instantly understood what it meant. He quickly turned to the right with and grabbed Angie's hand. What are you? Didn't you say, well, keep moving together? Angie yelled as E dragged her away. Go, Gustav yelled, not giving any room for explanations as he kept running with speed. Hey, come after me, bastards. Gustav yelled with a loud tone as he grabbed something from the ground and flung it in the direction of the beasts chasing from behind. As E and Angie made their way forward in practically the opposite direction, the hordes began to split. This was something Gustav knew would happen, but he already decided he was going to pull their attention to himself alone. Tay, Tay, Tay. He quickly tapped on his Eye of Bracelet and activated an attack. Energy Cannon Blast. Gustav turned around and pointed his arm at the ground as energy built up across the bracelet. Tuayanin Boom. A loud blast rang out in the next moment as a green beam shot into the ground from his arm. Heavy winds dispersed dust in all directions, covering up the entire vicinity in a couple of moments. "100 life points. Roalfadi Alfes in New 100 life points. 100 life points. 100 life points." He was still losing life points at an insane rate due to attacks were coming from every direction. Fortunately, due to their high numbers, the attacks from above was slamming into the multiple lower-limbed beasts as well. So it turned out to be a win-lose situation at this point. Gustav had not been completely caught due to this, but he was running out of steam. His nose was running, his entire body was sweaty, and his vision was starting to turn blurry. He felt he must have gone far enough at this point but kept going, deciding that he wouldn't stop till he could no longer stop moving. Fly. A couple of seconds later, the skeletal creatures were swooping down from above in tins, while the lower-limbed beasts were leaping towards Gustav at the same time in high numbers. They approached in waves unlike before, where some of them hadn't managed to meet up, descending in such high numbers that it looked like a swarm of darkness. Gustav was unable to take another step forward as they landed on him in droves, completely covering him up. Their weight pressed against him like the weight of a mountain as his face kissed the ground. All that could be seen before him was darkness, along with the small glow of the computerized internal helm the Eye of Bracelet created. Gustav was losing hundreds of life points in a second, and reckoned that it would take less than 3 minutes before his life points were depleted to zero. He struggled to reach his left arm, barely tapping on it despite not being able to raise his face from the ground. He had no idea what was currently displayed on the surface of the Eye of Bracelet. He could only hope he was tapping on the functions he had in mind. "If I'm gonna get disqualified, I might as well take as many of these bastards with me as I can." Gustav managed to curse under his hurried breath as he pressed his Eye of Bracelet surface against the ground with his last strength. He barely heard the sound of the bracelet, depicting that his last attack had been activated, unlocking participant supernatural abilities for 10 seconds. If Gustav could see the display on his arm at the moment, he wouldn't have been able to believe his eyes. However, this didn't stop him from suddenly opening his tired eyes widely as he suddenly felt streams of energy flowing into him. "I didn't get rid of the restrictions on my abilities, did I?" He internally wondered with a confused expression. 9 seconds. The instant a beeping sound rang in his ears, he raised his head with ease and stared at the Eye of Bracelet on his left arm. Oh, so that's why. Gustav immediately understood as his fatigue disappeared along with all of the pains he had been afflicted from the barrages of attacks. The view from above displayed hundreds of beasts' bodies gathered in a particular area like a hill. They had piled on Gustav, and from anyone's point of view, it seemed like he was done for. Boom. A loud blast suddenly rang out as a reddish wave of energy spread forth from Gustav, being bang, 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 bang. The hundreds of beasts initially surrounding him got sent flying in every direction with their limbs separating from their bodies. Green and blue blood rained like a fountain as body parts fell from the air as well. Gustav stood to his feet with a menacing gaze in his eyes as the aura emitting from his figure caused the vicinity to tremble from pressure. 8 seconds. His figure turned illusionary as HS dashed across the vicinity, driving his fists into the heads of the beasts that were left. Bang! They were unable to escape his onslaught as he moved like a phantom, arriving before the next target once he had finished ripping one to shreds. Fwaya heads were still falling from the air, yet Gustav had ripped 5 more before they could touch the ground. He leapt into the air and grabbed a skeletal creature by the head, forcibly ripping it from the neck before flinging it with immense force. Bang! 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 A line of 4 skeletal creatures were instantly burrowed with holes as the head turned into a projectile that tore through them mercilessly. Gustav was like the harbinger of death at this moment, leaping from one creature to another and leaving holes in them before they could even understand what was going on. 5 seconds. Chapter 1234s, 5 seconds. Only 5 seconds had gone by since he regained his abilities, Yet he had managed to lay waste to all of the beasts in the vicinity who numbered in over 200. Gustav turned his head in a particular direction as he sped sideways, managing to evade a pouring body parts that landed exactly in the position he initially was. Swoosh. He arrived thousands of feet away from his initial location, standing before a hole. Gustav! Two familiar voices rang out from within. Knowing there was limited time left, Gustav grabbed hold of Angie and swiftly and pulled them out of the hole. Fushum, he leapt into the air with both of them in his grasp, leaving them with tons of questions which he was currently unable to answer. Large bat-like wings sprouted out of Gustav's back as he ascended into the air with speed. He dived forward with the wings flapped powerfully. They tore through the air at intense speed, leaving afterimages across it and crossing two regions in a matter of seconds. 1 second, bam! Gustav landed heavily on a grassy patch of land in the last second, before slowly dropping Angie and 0 seconds. He felt his supernatural strength and abilities leaving once more, but fortunately they had served their purpose. Phew! Gustav sighed in relief as he crouched, before taking a seat on this patchy grassland. How the hell did you manage to use your powers? Questioned with a tone of utter astonishment and confusion. You even got us to a green zone. Angie was just as shocked. The last attack on the Eye of Bracelet wasn't an attack, Gustav answered. It unlocked my abilities for 10 seconds, he added. Both of them had looks of understanding upon hearing this. They initially thought Gustav had found a way to cheat, but now it made sense. For Gustav, crossing a distance that would take them up to 5 hours of hiking with human capabilities would take him 5 seconds if he was unrestrained. 0:31. 25, 31 minutes left. Phew. I thought we were toast, voiced as he checked the bracelet. This isn't the green zone we were headed. Did you change direction? Angie questioned, as she noticed the name on the map was different. Yeah, there was really no time. I just went in any direction and landed us here, Gustav responded. Who cares anyways? So long as we're safe. He slumped onto the land and closed his eyes with a relaxed expression. I'm down to around 1,000 life points, but it is more than enough to make it through 30 minutes, Gustav stated. Only 337 participants managed to make it this far, he added, causing and Angie to stare at him with looks of curiosity. I expected more, Angie voiced, especially since the Beast Haven is very large, added. When Gustav's abilities were unrestricted momentarily, his perception had combed through the entirety of the Beast Haven. Due to this, he had managed to perceive the precise number of participants left when the horde of beasts were stacked atop of him. He happened to see a particular one that made him a little surprised due to the action they were engaging in at that moment. However, Gustav didn't think much of this as he was busy trying to make the best use of his 10 seconds. The number of beasts are too high for participants not to fall into unfortunate scenarios, Gustav reminded, hinting that they barely managed to get through one themselves. The trio agreed with Gustav as they recalled all they had been through in the last 3 days. They continued chatting as they waited for the rest of the time to pass so the challenge could come to an end. 00, 004, 00, 003, 00, 002, 00, 001, 00, 00, 00, the Beast Haven challenge has come to a finish. A loud electronic voice reverberated across the 9th disc and the location of the Beast Haven. After the announcement, a scoreboard was displayed on the floating screens, showing how many planets had participants left. It turned out that out of over 1,000 planets, only a little over 200 managed to have participants that made it to the end. Planet Rudenberg, 2 participants. Planet Ozius, 5 participants. Planet Gundabalt, 3 participants. Planet Indulus Prime, 6 participants. Roelfidialfes Inuam, Planet Draconet, 1 participant. Planet Oxlurk, 7 participants. Planet Claxosape, 10 participants. Planet Fixic, 2 participants. Planet Earth, 5 participants. Planet Zionsi, 1 participant. Planet Hixto, 1 participant. Planet Tronvida, 1 participant. Planet Tribtes, 12 party pants. The results had both the spectators and participants astonished as they took note of the winning planets. Only the Draconet captain managed to make it all the way through. That's the fruit of recklessness. They still pass though. Who else thought Earth would have the highest number left? Alpha D Alpha Eta Theta Nu Epsilon, Theta M Planet Tribtes were the most organized, that's why they have the highest number of participants left. The spectators debated about how the results turned out like they didn't witness the happenings with their eyes. Their reactions were to be expected since a lot of them couldn't keep eyes on all the screens at the same time. There was no way to observe the activities of every location within the Beast Haven at the same time. Zing, 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 zing. The participants within the Beast Haven began to appear back within the arena on the 9th disc in successions. Yo man, did you make it? E voiced out as soon as they reunited with the others on the arena. No, I got disqualified with Glade and Yonda, Eldris chuckled wryly. Oh I thought you were one of the last two who finished with us. He was quite surprised since everyone knew how capable Eldris was, with or without supernatural abilities. He glanced at Yonda in suspicion, who in turn looked away guiltily. I was watching and rooting for you guys from here. Indrik and Timi were the last two besides you guys, Eldris voiced while using his thumbs to point in the direction of Indrik and Timi who had just appeared right behind them. Good one guys, E chuckled while raising his right hand. Pa. He gave them both high fives and the group began catching up with each other. If they want to steal from us, well steal from them instead, Gustav stated. Yeehaha, those motherfuck *RS can bring it on. E yelled with fired-up spirit. This way we'd also be able to increase the number of eggs we have while others are stealing from one another as well. Eldris also agreed with the decision. Are you up for it? Gustav asked Falco while placing a hand on his shoulder. Of course, why not? Falco responded with a wry smile. Good, Gustav voiced. Falco walked away with a contemplative look to wait for the others outside the Iro silk cover. Darko, where the hell are you? He wondered internally as he raised his right palm. He isn't all right, the system voiced in Gustav's mind while he deactivated the Iro silk. I know, but I won't push it unless he asks for my help, Gustav replied internally. Guys, shall we? E proceeded to conjure a large vortex. The group proceeded to move into the vortex and reappeared a great distance away. EE's spatial abilities had become so powerful that he could open a vortex in space while standing on the surface of a planet. His range had improved a great deal, as well as many other aspects since their time at the Oasis. The group wasted no time in searching for eggs upon arriving at a new environment. This was a sparse forest of frosty trees which happened to have a sloppy terrain. Gustav's first action was scanning the entire vicinity and telling his teammates which direction to head in to gather eggs. They soon cleared the area of required colored eggs and moved on to the next. E ensured to conjure a vortex that was close to 1,000 miles away, just to make sure they were away from the vicinity completely. Gustav would always make sure to spread his senses around, so he could inform the group when there was nothing left. Occasionally, they came across different participants of other planets, but they continued on with their business and only left if Gustav sensed that there was no eggs around. After many hours had gone by, they arrived in another area that happened to be silent and very gloomy. What stood out to them were the massive statue towers arranged in rows and columns across the surroundings. These statues were around 3,000 feet in height, and each of them looked similar to handlers with insect-like head and antennas that held their eyeballs. However, each of these frosty statues held on to different weapons, each just as massive as they were, and Gustav calculated that there were at least 10,000 statues. Since the statues were lined up in rows and columns, there were passable spaces in between them despite their figures covering up the entire vicinity. Chapter 1235. Elevra and Rhea weren't the only ones who got harassed during the Beast Haven challenge. Glade suddenly voiced out from the side. The group turned to stare at her with looks of confusion upon her utterance. Those guys came looking for trouble, Glade added while pointing at her 7 o'clock. There were all sort of participants from different groups all around them, so it was hard to make out the exact individual she was referring to. Which one of them? Timi questioned. Those guys we met during the Vinder Egg Challenge that Gustav also had issues with. Glade didn't seem to recall the name of their species as she explained. The Zionsis? Gustav voiced with a slightly surprised expression. Yes, them. The transparent-skinned weirdos. Glade responded with an irritated expression. Glade and E had a knack for insulting other species that irked them in the most natural way possible, but no one took heed of her subtle word jab at the moment. They were more interested in how her encounter had gone with them. Two of them I came across ambushed me and are also responsible causing my disqualification, Glade stated. You just bumped into them on a random or... I bumped into them on a random and they were out to get me at the cost of getting disqualified because of their teammate I and Falco battled the other time. Glade went on to narrate her experience and how she had to make use of her attacks to protect herself from them. They acted like a deranged bunch, coming at me with so much animosity. Glade finished recounting her experience, causing the others to shoot intense glares in the direction of the Zionsis. I suddenly feel uncomfortable, one of the Zionsis voiced while rubbing his skin. It's the Earth participants, another one of the announced after spotting the multiple eyes glued to their direction. Why are they staring at us like that? The vice captain of the Zionsis questioned with a clueless expression. I hope no one did anything stupid, Captain Alumo questioned, but the lack of reply made him overlook the whole situation. By the sides, 5 of his subordinates stared at each other with hidden intentions. On the side of the Earth participants, Gustav was addressing the issue. Listen, guys, it's obvious that we have garnered spite and dislike due to our current position along with the conflicting situations we have found ourselves in during each of these challenges. Everything you faced in the Beast Haven Survival Challenge was also to be expected because in the end, only one planet can win. We are a threat to everyone. It wouldn't be beneath them to try every tactic to get rid of us, Gustav said lengthily, causing them to nod in understanding. However, since you all know me well, you should also know that I won't let the latest events go by without appropriate payback. The Zionsis will be dealt with first. As for Captain Strum, he'll take care of him when the time comes, Gustav added. How are we dealing with the Zionsis? Glade questioned while squeezing her fist. She was just as angry as Alevera and wasn't interested in letting things slide. Attention participants, Handler 1 began addressing the bunch from the platform above. I'll brief you guys later, Gustav stated. Alpha D Alpha S Eta Theta Nu Epsilon, they couldn't ignore it, or such would continue. It was also obvious that Glade wasn't the only one being targeted by the Zionsis. Timmy had also been a part of the battle where he had given one of their teammates an injury they still hadn't recovered from completely till now. Gustav felt they were out to get both of them, and he wasn't willing to let anything of the sorts happen to Timmy. 5,000 points to all teams that survived till the end of the challenge, as well as 100 points addition for each team member left. Handler 1 continued briefing them on the gains gotten from finishing the challenge. He congratulated the groups that managed to make it to the end as the scoreboard displayed the additional points added to every group based on the number of teammates they had left at the ending. Gustav already suspected that something like this might happen, but there was no helping it since only 5 teammates, himself included, managed to make it to the end. He wasn't too bothered about it since it was only 100 extra points per head. Earth had gained 5,500 points in total after the tallying of points. Planet Tribdes had extra 1,200 points due to the number of participants that finished, bringing them to a total of 6,200 points acquired. They gained the highest in this challenge, while many planets had only 100 extra points due to having just one participant left at the end. The Draconids especially were feeling bashful at the current turn of events and internally blamed their captain since a lot of them got disqualified due to his unbrazen acts. This is nothing but a victory for cowards. Be proud that we shamed not our great planet, Captain Strum voiced strongly, causing everyone to display looks of disgust and discomfort. Those who had gotten disqualified earlier had witnessed how Captain Strum laid waste to a lot of the beasts within the haven. He was no doubt one of the strongest captains, but they also felt he was too prideful and hot-headed. Roelfa Dialfes, Inu Omit was only a matter of time before that caught up with him according to their thoughts. The main scoreboard was displayed a few seconds later, showing the current change in scores of every planetary group. Earth remained number 1 while a few others beneath had changed places due to the current addition in scores. Planet Tribit had climbed to 4th place by a couple of points, but it seemed like Earth's number 1 position was still indisputable. Handler 1 made it clear that they had just finished the first half of ISOP, and the next challenge would be the start of the second half of the competition. Performing their best in the second half and being above Earth in almost all major challenges was really the only way to surpass Earth's current number of points for those below. Based on the image Earth had built for themselves, it was looking like a difficult task. However, the moment the next challenge was announced, everyone began to see a glimmer of hope. The next major challenge has already been predetermined, Handler 1 announced. Everyone paid even more attention after hearing this. It was no doubt that predetermined major challenges were usually more complicated and had the best gains like the Vinder challenge. They knew it most likely wouldn't be as lengthy, but they were looking forward to it as they knew acquiring a lot of points would be possible if they performed well. Points acquisition versus matches, Handler 1 announced with a loud voice. Chatter, 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 chatter. It will hold the day after tomorrow, and as for the information on everything you need to know about this challenge, I will of course be explaining everything on that day, Handler 1 added. This caused another loud ruckus across the arena. I am aware, and you're not helping. Gustav's only reason for attacking the balls were to deter them and avoid making any contact. He was never trying to destroy them in the first place. Fwihii. As the group made it past a quarter of the statue challenge terrain, the statues behind suddenly stabbed their weapons downwards. Bang, 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 bang. The statues behind, lined in a horizontal format, blocked the path with their weapons slamming into the ground. The ice balls chasing after Gustav and the others were completely blocked off and could no longer chase them. Phew, that was something. He heaved a sigh of relief as the group came together once more. Man, you didn't even have any issues, Timmy voiced with a slight tone of annoyance. Gustav, are you okay? Vera questioned as they stared at Gustav, standing with a single leg and missing an arm as well. It will grow back, Gustav stated. Don't let your guard down. We're not out of the clear yet, he quickly added before the group could ask any more questions. We've definitely entered another stage of the challenge, Eldris stated as they peered forward with intrigued and wary gazes. We should. Just as Falco was about to suggest something, the ground began caving in around them. Krryychhh. Dai. As the icy, sloppy ground caved in around them, they were forced to head towards the middle path as it seemed to be the only unaffected area. The statues remained standing in the vicinity despite the crumbling grounds. The team arrived in the middle path, which was large enough for them to stand side by side. Looking over the edge, they could see a water body hundreds of feet below where the grounds had caved in. God Eyes has been activated. It is as I suspected. The water below us is not ordinary, Gustav informed the others the instant he inspected the liquid below. Chapter 1236 Discovering Axelar, Miss Amy. Gustav responded with a warm tone before his eyes darted to the person next to her. Stark. I see you two have finally met, Gustav voiced while moving closer to them. Why does this strung-up kid say he knows you? He stopped me from dealing with the rat, Miss Amy voiced while pointing at Stark. Hee. A wry chuckle escaped Stark's lips as he rubbed his head nervously. Anyone would show respect to him as the head of the Vertigons, but Miss Amy didn't seem to care about that. He felt this was rightly so too, since he found out that this was the famed Amy, the mixed blood who became a goddess. Immediately after Gustav heard Miss Amy's statement, he knew what she was talking about. You guys go ahead, I'll catch up, Gustav said to the others. The group nodded and greeted Miss Amy as well as Stark before leaving. After they had left, Miss Amy, Gustav, and Stark moved to a particular part of the spectators' area to discuss privately. You found the person selling Aesop information? Gustav questioned. The instant Miss Amy mentioned getting stopped from dealing with a rat, Gustav knew she was definitely referring to whoever was selling info. I did, Miss Amy replied. So who is it? Which one of the handlers? It definitely has to be someone high up, Gustav voiced in quick successions. It isn't one of Ozis, Miss Amy instantly dismissed. What? If it isn't one of the Ozis, then who is it? Gustav inquired with a tone of curiosity. It's an individual named Axelar, Stark replied from the side. Who is that? Gustav was thrown into the sea of confusion once more. He's or she or it, since they do not have a gender, is a Declaro, from the planet Declan, Miss Amy stated. Declan, The planet that got destroyed due to the intergalactic war against the Fixians about 500 years ago? Gustav recalled this from one of the books he read within the MBO camp over a year ago. Yes, their species, or what is left of it, is now scattered across the universe since they no longer have a place to call their home, Miss Amy voiced in confirmation. This one in particular, Axeler, is a well-known intergalactic trader, guide, and collector who is wanted in 4 different planets under the Alliance. Some of the activities it engages in are not entirely legal, but at the same time, it is still well known in many places as its endeavors had spread across galaxies. It is said to possess many unique collections from all across the galaxies and have sold to both questionable and authoritative figures. I've been given a mission in the past to capture it due to one of the planets after him asking for Earth's help in catching him. Miss Amy's last sentence piqued the interest of both of them as she gave them information on Axeler. You didn't manage to catch him? Gustav questioned with a look of surprise. Of course I did, Miss Amy responded. Gustav's face at this moment was one that without a doubt displayed what he was thinking. Then how is he still at large? They let Axeler go. My job was only to catch him and hand him over, which I did. I wasn't going to concern myself with whatever they chose to do to it. What I do remember is, despite being wanted, Axeler is also protected by powerful figures all across the galaxies, so I'm sure they found a way to free him, Miss Amy explained. Gustav wouldn't have believed it if Miss Amy had failed to catch Axeler. The whole scenario made more sense now. He doesn't sound like someone that would be allowed to attend ISOP, Gustav said with a look of confoundment. Because it isn't. It came here disguised as someone else. I'm not surprised it managed to sneak in undetected. One of Axeler's strong suit is getting into any place he wishes to, no matter how protected or dangerous such a place is. That's why he is one of the most famous collectors all across galaxies today, Miss Amy replied with faint admiration despite the status of the Declaro. And by now you would have caught him again if it wasn't for Stark, right? Gustav tried to piece things together based on what he had heard so far. That is right. It possesses what is known as a sentient level breach artifact. This item is the stuff of legends, as many intergalactic travelers who also bear the title of collectors have tried to acquire it for themselves and failed. Turns out it succeeded, and is also using that to figure out information on ISOP challenges before they are issued. He sells the information here on the 9th disk to participating planets who are able to afford it. That little critter is still as greedy as I remember, Miss Amy voiced lengthily. I identified Axeler from up there and swooped down to capture him, but your friend here stopped me from taking Axeler at the last minute, saying you wouldn't have wanted things to go that way, Miss Amy added. Stark, why did you stop her? Gustav questioned while turning to face Stark. Because I have a preposition, Stark voiced with an insightful expression. Instead of capturing him and handing him over to the handlers, why don't we use him to our advantage? Stark added. Using him to our advantage would be considered cheating, which could also bring problems to use if people were to find out, Gustav responded while shaking his head. He would have given it more thought if this wasn't the case. He wasn't willing to jeopardize the Earth, especially since their current standing isn't bad. I don't mean use him like that. Stark's statement caused Miss Amy to stare with curiosity. I mean use him to sabotage the others purchasing information from him. This way we could ruin their plans and still remain free from the corruption of cheating, Stark explained. I see, that's a good one. Gustav held his chin before turning to stare in Miss Amy's direction. Can we do that? Can we make him sabotage the others? Gustav questioned. Knowing how it takes pride in its actions and reputation, Axeler will definitely refuse to do such, so his credibility remains unsullied, and it doesn't affect his business in the future, Miss Amy voiced in response. So we can't. No, it's fine because it won't be a request, it will be a demand. A demand he won't be able to refuse, Miss Amy spoke with a frosty tone, causing Stark to chuckle nervously. Great, then let's do this, Gustav stated with a look of excitement. I can see him right now. He's currently conducting a business, Stark voiced with his eyes emitting a golden glow. So quick? The Beast Haven challenge just ended an hour ago. I guess it is to be expected since everyone is curious as to the details of the upcoming major challenge, Gustav thought. You can see it? Miss Amy questioned Stark. Yes, the same way I saw you when you were up there and knew where you'd land first. I've also had my eyes on him since I arrived on planet Ozius. Stark's response caused Miss Amy to show a hint of astonishment. Stark was truly remarkable, being able to see her real body when no one could. Gustav had nearly forgotten that Stark had the all-seeing eyes till he made use of it again. He wondered how being able to see everything must feel like. If Stark was unable to control it, this was something that could definitely drive anyone crazy, since it was like having a bunch of monitors lined up in a circular format within you, giving back vivid footage of ongoing activities in both personal and public spaces. It really was like having an invisible CCTV placed everywhere. "Shall we?" Stark questioned after a brief silence. "Lead the way," Gustav responded. "Gladly." Stark mouthed off as he turned in a particular direction and leapt into the air. Flyei, in mid-air, he transformed into a three-headed draconic figure that flew off into the distance. Gustav and Miss Amy followed behind effortlessly. Within a space with a restaurant-like setting, a bunch of individuals clad in all sorts of outfits that were unrecognizable to any Earthling enjoyed having the meal before them and chatting away in various languages. A lot of these individuals also happened to bear different appearances, since the restaurant had different planetary species gathered within. The manner in which the interior of restaurant was structured was one that a human would most definitely find odd. The golden-colored floors happened to be triangular in shape. The floors were so steep that people and the feeding tables set before them should be falling off. Yet everything was well balanced on the steep floor. To make things even more complicated, the upper floors of restaurant were shaped in an upside-down triangular format, making it look like everyone was eating upside down, yet no one fell off. At a section of this odd-looking restaurant, which was apparently normal to its inhabitants, two unknown figures sat before each other. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Com. Chapter 1237 sat a section of this odd-looking restaurant, which was apparently normal to its inhabitants. Two unknown figures sat before each other. One had an armadillo-shaped face with brownish scales all over, with a humanoid-structured full body. The one on the other side had a transparent-like skin that looked like a layer of water with weird reddish markings on his face. He had an extremely serious expression as he spoke, while the armadillo-shaped faced creature on the other end looked like he was in a silly, goofy mood. "I really need it. Please help," the transparent-skinned being begged. "HNMMHOUUU." The armadillo-faced-like creature exclaimed pleasurably as it chewed on the contents of the plate before it. "Oh mine, this dish is definitely amongst my top 10 now. It replaces the humor special at number 10. Planet Ozius truly lives up to its reputation as one of the leaders of the Alliance. Really top-tier food quality here," it added while grabbing another piece of the purplish dripping wormy-like eyeball on the table. "This is serious. It is a matter of life and death," the transparent-skinned being stated with a strong tone while looking around as he tried not to speak too loud. "It is a matter of life and death that I finish this dish." The armadillo-faced being exclaimed pleasurable again as it downed another mouthful of the dish before it. "Ugh." The transparent-skinned being did his best not to lose his temper as he sat in place for a second, watching the creature before him gobble down chunks after chunks. "Sherman, you haven't gulps touched your food," the armadillo-faced being voiced amidst his chews. "I am not hungry. This is a ma." The transparent-skinned being hadn't managed to complete his sentence when the armadillo-faced being cut him off. "Then can I have it?" it questioned. "You? Fine, you can have it." Sherman folded his arms and leaned backwards with a tired expression, while the armadillo-faced creature kept devouring everything in sight. "Thank you, Sherman," it voiced joyously. About a minute later, it had devoured every piece of food on the table completely and began cleaning its hands. "Why do you have a scowl on your face?" "Oh, that's right, a matter of life and death," the armadillo-faced creature said with an empathetic tone. Yes, will you help me now?" Sherman questioned. "From what you told me, it seems like you folks are the ones that want to sentence someone to death," the armadillo-faced creature voiced with a tone of awareness. "It is still life and death. The other party deserves it," Sherman responded. "Haha, when you put it that way, you're not entirely wrong. I have something for your young sapling that would work, but it will work just once and can never be reused afterwards," the armadillo-faced creature stated while raising its right paw-like hand and tapping on a necklace around its chest. Ting, a small trinket that looked like a mix between a ring and a necklace, appeared in its grasp. The metallic edges emitted a faint magenta glow, and the circular ring-like area had the carvings of the mouth of an unknown monster on its surface. Besides these details, the trinket looked quite ordinary. So long as your young sapling wears this while activating an attack, it will do the required job, but remember, it can only be used once. The armadillo-faced creature spoke while passing it to Sherman on the other side. He won't get another chance to use it? That is quite risky. What if it misses the target? Sherman questioned. It can't. Once the target is decided by the user, nothing in the entire universe will stop it from meeting the goal. The armadillo-faced creature stated with an aura of confidence that immediately erased any doubt Sherman had. Thank you, Sherman said while keeping it away. Just pay my fee and scamper off. I have another appointment soon. The armadillo-faced creature voiced with a light chuckle. However, in the next instant its facial expression suddenly changed. She is Ka. Before Stark could complete his sentence, a figure flickered into existence right before their eyes. The powerful-looking figure in all white had the same armadillo-faced creature from before in her grasp as she floated slightly above the ground. GHD him. Stark finished his sentence after their appearance. He tried to escape in his spacecraft hovering deep in space, Miss Amy voiced while holding the armadillo-faced creature above the ground effortlessly. Did both of them just bypass the planet's security in seconds, going back and forth within its orbit like it's nothing? Stark couldn't help but be astonished despite being aware that these were two legends in different fields. It was even crazier that they were undetected, and he had seen Axelar flying away in his spacecraft already, but Miss Amy was just too powerful. She breached it and took him out forcefully before bringing him back to the ninth disk, all in less than 5 seconds. There was no doubt that had Gustav and Stark done this themselves without the help of Miss Amy, Axelar would have been long gone already. It seemed like he was ready to leave instantly at the first sign of danger. However, since this was Miss Amy, he was completely out of luck. She had caught him in the past when she still took missions for the MBO. There was no doubt that she would capture him again, especially now that she was more powerful. AI. Amy, please spare me a he-I. Axelar shrieked in fear while begging. You shouldn't have tried to run then, Miss Amy voiced while expressing a smirk of depravity. Oh, it's reflex action, you can't blame me. Please let me go. I'll give you half. No, you can have all of my wealth, he begged frantically while recalling the past of how he suffered intensely in the hands of Miss Amy in the past. This woman was the devil to him. She imprinted a fear deep into his mind 5 years ago that he couldn't get rid of even till now. You know, I need none of that. Even if you were to offer me your pitiful life, I wouldn't take it, Miss Amy replied while turning around. I have something else you can do for me instead, Miss Amy stated before flickering out of existence like she appeared here in the first place. This didn't mean Miss Amy had teleportation powers or anything. She was just so fast that it looked like she was vanishing when she moved. Miss Amy had grown so powerful that her rapid movements didn't have much effects on the surroundings, so everyone within the restaurant were barely affected. Panda's novel. Kampfwilhelms, they sped out of the place, causing winds to blast in every direction as Ozus law enforcement made their way to the location. What do you want from me this time? Please hand me over to the authorities here, Axelar voiced within a secluded, dark space. He preferred being far away from Miss Amy, even if that meant getting locked up. Chapter 1238. He preferred being far away from Miss Amy, even if that meant getting locked up. No, they will just get you out like last time. That's useless to me, Miss Amy replied while conjuring a seat before the creature. She proceeded to gracefully take her seat before Axelar, who was completely bind. Gustav stood by Miss Amy's right and Stark stood by his. I heard you've been selling information on Aesop using a sentient level breach artifact, Miss Amy voiced with a frosty tone as usual. I am only trying to survive as a poor trader, Axelar responded with a shaky tone. You lying rat? You're already rich enough, Miss Amy stated, causing Axelar to tremble even more. Anyways, what I want is, I can't take you seriously with that look. Take. Miss Amy demanded strongly. Why, yes. Axeler quickly muttered a few incoherent words after replying. Iktu she rakuma. The sixth ring on his right hand emitted a greenish glow ANX in the next instant. Axeler began transforming. Thrire, his furry skin turned smooth as the hairs on them retracted. His pointed rodent-like face, reduced in width and increased in length, turning human-like. The rest of his body changed as well, and in the next moment what stared back at them was an extremely beautiful-looking creature. Axeler's face and skin were so smooth that they could be mistaken for glass. His skin was a mixture of yellow and whitish colors. There was no hair on his head. Instead, it was replaced with a red crown that looked like an helmet covering his entire scalp. This was surprising a part of his body and not aware. His beautiful figure and enhancingly structured body, along with his full red lips, would make anyone wonder if he was male or female. Anyone would be confused. Gustav was glad Miss Amy had informed Hum earlier that the Declaros were genderless and usually reproduce asexually. He couldn't imagine just how many people would be disappointed by this all across galaxies where Axeler have visited in the past. Gustav had no idea that Axeler also had to run from depraved and lustful male and female species who all wanted him to sate their sexual desires regardless of his origin. Better, Miss Amy voiced before resuming. First tell us who your clients have been since the start of Aesop, Gustav voiced from the side. It is not your place to ask me that, little chimp, Axeler responded with a scowl. Answer him, Miss Amy stated with an authoritative tone. Am not supposed to reveal my cly. The instant his eyes met Miss Amy's he paused. Diaperonians, Redonta, Fixic, Draconets, Zionci. Axeler began to list them one after the other without adding the details of what exactly he sold to them. That's a lot. I didn't think some of these planets were rich enough to afford your services, Miss Amy said with a tone of interest. Axeler had mentioned a total of 87 planets that had contacted him for one service or the other since the competition began. This meant that a lot of these planets didn't care that he was a wanted entity despite being under the Alliance. Not every single one of them requested for information on the future details of Aesop. Some required cheaper services while some required services beyond just information, Axeler stated. Now here is what you're going to do. When next they require your services, you will provide them with wrong information. Not just wrong, information that will sabotage their participation in the future challenges. Miss Amy finally revealed her terms. But, I can't do that. It would tarnish my reputation, and I could lose lots of customers in the future. Axeler's eyes expressed pleading. I don't care. That is the only reason you're here right now. You will sabotage the others for me, Miss Amy stated with an intimidating expression. Axeler gulped with fear and indignation in his eyes. Please, anything but this. I'll leave the planet right now if you want me to, please. He kept begging and laid on the ground before Miss Amy. This is the only thing I need you for, or will you like for us to take a trip down memory lane? Miss Amy's eyes emitted a mischievous glint as she stated. No. Please no. Axeler's eyes widened as he wailed like a miserable new widow just by thinking about it. Just what did he experience for him to have this much fear? Stark wondered. It's been a while since I last saw anyone show this much fear for Miss Amy. She was truly a demoness back then. Gustav recalled just how much fear her name and face would put in the minds of everyone who knew her back when they would go everywhere together. Within one of the rooms in the Earth's participants' accommodation area, a figure could be seen moving from side to side on a bed. I think you should take a look at Panda's novel. His sleeping face displayed an uncomfortable expression as he rolled across the bed while dark tattoos would occasionally appear on his body. He exclaimed in discomfort once more while still unconscious as a dark mark appeared on his forehead. His eyelids twitched repeated as the mark grew until dark mist began to phase out of his head. This dark mist started to form a spiky crown which hovered above his head while his body thrashed around even more violently and uncontrollably. The moment the crown formed halfway, his eyes suddenly sprang open. "Nu!" Falco yelled at the top of his voice, as mist burst forth from his pitch-black eyes. Fum rumoawum, a cloud of darkness surrounded the entire structure instantly. I don't want it. He struggled vehemently, causing the crown to stop forming. In the next moment, the crown began dissipating along with the dark clouds in the vicinity. Panda's novel. Calm, Falco. Are you okay? A feminine voice was heard from the other side of the door ahead. Falco recognized this voice to be Angie's, but didn't respond immediately because he was trying to calm himself so as not to sound strange when he did. Hey man, we just want to know if you're good. We heard screams. Voice was heard next from the other end of the door after there was no response for a couple of seconds. Falco stood to his feet and walked towards his room door. He breathed in deeply once more to calm himself before sliding the door open. I'm fine, guys. I was just training, Falco said with a smile as he stared at the three before his door. Angie, and Timmy. The trio had a look of relief on their faces as they heard that. Man, we have a place for training, haha. We were worried when the entire building got covered with darkness, said while tapping Falco's shoulder. My bad, Falco chuckled wryly, but in the next instant his facial expression changed. What is that? He questioned with a look of horror while pointing forward. What is Wah? Hadn't managed to complete his question when a strong wave of darkness spread from up ahead. Falco's eyes widened and his legs began trembling as the trio in front of him fell to the floor with their body parts splattering all across the place. Angie's smiling face rolled to a corner as her head was cleanly decapitated. Her limbs looked like the props of a horror movie lined up before him as a pool of blood was formed on the floor. His mouth slowly began to open as his eyes widened even more. His chest had a hole in it as his torso kissed the floor up ahead. His heart was still falling from the air, sending splutters of blood across the place. His two legs remained straightened on the ground as blood poured from his tip of his knees area, which was missing along with the rest of his body. Timmy's head stamped to the other end of the wall, missing eyeballs which upon closer look were rolling across the floor. Right behind the rest of his body parts along with his intestines and bowels turned into a carpet behind making the floor look even more sophisticated as a stench of death spread across the air. A gritty and long arm made from pitch darkness held onto Angie's head, lifting it off the ground. Alwa. Falco's knees continues to tremble intensely as he watched the horror that had unfolded before him powerlessly. The long arm brought Angie's decapitated head to his face, holding it before him like it was trying to make a point. Her smiling, decapitated head showed no pain or discomfort like she had died before she could realize what was going on. Hi. Falco's eyes turned completely red as he slumped to his knees, while tears began streaming out of his eyes uncontrollably. The dark arm brought the decapitated head down to his face level, while it dripped with fresh blood continuously. Look at them. An imperial voice laced with dominance and doom voiced loudly. Chapter 1239. The dark arm brought the decapitated head down to his face level, while fresh blood dripped from it continuously. Look at them. An imperial voice laced with dominance and doom reverberated loudly across the space. I said look at them. Panda's novel. Come on high. It is all your fault. You did this to them. Falco yelled. No. You did this to them. You are to blame my son. The imperial voice boomed once more. Arf. Falco began screaming at the top of his lungs. His heart broke into tiny little pieces as he stared at the scenery of death before him. You did this to them. The voice stated once more, piercing deeper than 1,000,000 knives into Falco's chest. Falco clenched his hairs and pulled like he was trying to yank bits off his scalp as he kept screaming. No! He screamed till his voice cracked when all of a sudden the world around him changed. Fuh. Falco's eyes suddenly sprang open as he jolted from his bed, breathing erratically. Bang, 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 bang. Falco, are you okay in there? Bang, 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 bang. We're coming in. A loud voice was heard from the other end, and what came next was a loud crash. Boom. The door was blasted open with strong force, causing it to slam onto the wall on the other side. Gaius! Falco's voice cracked as tears streamed down his face. Everyone had looks of bafflement on their faces, but Angie quickly reacted by stepping forward and pulling Falco into her embrace. "You're alive!" His voice trailed off as Angie placed his face on her shoulder and gently stroked his hair. "It's all right, it's fine. I'm sure whatever happened was just a nightmare. You're good now." Angie comforted him with her words as well. "Dash, it's gonna be fine, man. Dash, are you okay? Dash, do you need a glass of water? Dash, if you want to talk about it, we're here." The others gathered around Falco and comforted him as well, taking a seat beside Angie except for Indrik, who still stood at the entrance. "Fusarius, what did you notice?" Indrik questioned internally as he watched the scenery before him with a suspicious expression. "A presence out of order. I have never sensed anything like it before, but it's gone now," Fusarius responded internally. "Is it one of them? Because I recall you've only described them in a similar way before this," Indrik questioned internally. "The possibility is high, but at the same time, I do not understand what they would want with this kid. Unless this kid isn't what everyone thinks he is," Fusarius answered with a conflicted tone. "What do you mean by that?" Indrik brows furrowed. "I mean, you might have to start considering him to be a threat," Fusarius stated. "Can't you just see into the fates again and confirm if he is going to be trouble or not?" Indrik questioned. "Not when it might directly connect to them. Such an act bears immense risk, and we could be setting your brother back with such. As a time candidate, you know very well we cannot use the power of the fates loosely." Fusarius cautioned, knowing well that Indrik was currently capable of doing it himself. "You just have to be observant. Keep your eyes on the kid," he added. All right," Indrik responded internally before stepping forward. "I lost Darko," Falco voiced in the living room of the accommodation area. "Lost him? How is that even possible?" Timi questioned with a look of confusion. "I don't know. I just did. Since after I had that fight with the captain of the Draconites, I could no longer feel him." "He's gone," Falco voiced in response. "So all this time, you've been fighting by yourself? You've been the one using your dark bloodline abilities without his help?" Matilda questioned with a look of surprise. "I think you should take a look at Panda's novel." Yes," Falco answered. Everyone was stunned because they didn't notice this. They hadn't realized that it was Falco all this time because barely anything changed. His fighting was just as brutal. Dark Falco lives within you like a second personality, so doesn't that mean that your current personality might have gained dominance? Eldris voiced with a logical tone. "He isn't a second personality. He was a part of me. How can I bring him back?" Falco said with a dejected expression. "Have you tried speaking to Hai?" "I've tried everything that there is to try." No response. "I can't feel or sense him. He just vanished." Falco leaned his face onto the palm of his hands in frustration. He hated Dark Falco's existence in the pot and how he would slaughter mindlessly whenever he took over his body. However, over time Falco had come to understand that despite how much Dark Falco insulted him, he was always doing all he could to protect. Falco was losing his mind since Dark Falco vanished, but he tried his best to be cool-headed. He couldn't handle what came with the power of darkness. The continuous urge to commit heinous acts and subject living beings to experiences of torture. It was driving him insane. Dark Falco seemed to handle it well, but he couldn't. It was even crazier now that he was having realistic nightmares. Realistic nightmares? Falco's mind went back to earlier. "You did this to them. You are to blame my son." Son? Falco had thought his nightmares was from the Crown of Darkness, but the words from that imperial voice plagued him. He recalled his father on Earth, who was a business mogul with billions of rads. Although he was a mixed blood, he wasn't even close to being as powerful as Falco currently was. Dad couldn't even manage to pull something like this off, even if he tried. Why would that voice call me son? Is it another manipulation tactic? Whatever it was, Falco was surrounded that he was losing his mind. He didn't know what to do at this point. The others were still speaking in the background and expressing ideas, but Falco was already lost in deep thought, so he wasn't listening. Thaish, the door at the entrance made a low noise as it slid open. Falco looked up as this little sound brought him out of his reverie. What's with the look on you guys' faces?" Gustav questioned as he walked in. "It's Falco," E said from the side. He's having really intense nightmares, Angie said while rubbing Falco's back gently. Gustav's mind was instantly plagued with a myriad of thoughts as he picked one and centered on it. This all started with that incident in Arabia City. I'm sure it has something to do with what Dark Falco told me, Gustav thought. He said Dark Falco is gone. He can't sense him anymore, Eldris voiced as well. I know, Gustav responded. You do. The others were quite surprised that he was already aware. I sensed it from the time Falco got badly injured in the fight against Strum, Gustav stated. Nothing really gets past his eyes. Similar thoughts ran through their mind. Just as stated, Gustav was indeed aware that Falco had been battling all this time by himself. Despite all of Falco's actions to hide it, Gustav could still spot little differences between how they made use of the darkness bloodline. Why didn't you say anything? Angie questioned. I figured he'd ask when he needed help. I didn't want to pry. Gustav didn't add that he had closely watched over Falco, as well so he could act if things ever got to a level where Falco needed his help. The others were not too glad with the fact that Gustav was aware of this and didn't do anything to help. He's gone. Falco's voice trailed off as he spoke with a dejected tone. Falco, are you aware that you're not who you think you are? Gustav voiced as he stepped forward. Everyone's faces instantly lit up with confusion as they heard this while Indrik's eyes emitted a glint of suspicion. It sounds like Big Brother knows something, Indrik thought. What do you mean? Are you talking about the crown? Falco asked while looking up. Crown? What are you two talking about? Timmy asked the question on everyone's mind. I do recall the crown, but Dark Falco had also mentioned something back then when you were unconscious, Gustav stated. Everyone was still lost at the moment, not understanding what the two were talking about, and this was because none of them were present at the time. Even Falco was unconscious at the time. Dark Falco mentioned a couple of things back then which I am not very clear on yet, but I am sure you know more by now. Another thing I'm sure of is that Dark Falco is not gone, Gustav said with a tone of certainty. Do you mean I can get him back? Chapter 1240. Dark Falco mentioned a couple of things back then which I am not very clear on yet, but I am sure you know more by now. Another thing I'm sure of is that Dark Falco is not gone, Gustav said with a tone of certainty. Do you mean I can get him back? Falco's expression brightened up with a hint of hope. Yes, he isn't a personality. From my observations, he is a different entity that just so happens to share a body with you. You stopped sensing him after the battle with Strum, right? Gustav voiced. Yes, when I regained consciousness, I could no longer sense him, Falco replied. When did you awaken your bloodline? Gustav questioned. I was 10 at the time, Falco answered with a contemplative expression. When did Dark Falco appear and start taking over your body? Gustav asked. About a year later. I was always unable to control my bloodline abilities before then, Falco recalled. Then, it is just as I thought, Gustav voiced with a tone of realization. What do you mean by that? Falco inquired. God eyes have been activated. Some abilities have damages that are irreversible regardless of the applications of high-grade meds. Even if a person survives and gets treated, the side effects of getting hit with such an attack still remains. Gustav's explanation caused everyone to perk their ears up as they focused their attention on him. You should have died when Strum's spear struck you. Or more like your entire existence should have been reversed to the point where you become inexistent. As Gustav mentioned this, Falco's eyes widened slightly in realization. Captain Strum's spear ability is time-related, he voiced as his brain began piecing things together. Exactly. Dark Falco took most of the damage from that spear, and despite the fact that you've completely recovered, the effects still linger. Dark Falco will come back, but it will take time, Gustav voiced with a tone of certainty. It was now apparent to everyone that this was a time reversal effect that was untreatable. So he should be back in a year since it took that long for him to manifest in the first place. Falco had a look of relief for a split second before it turned back to despair. I can't handle this by myself for a whole year, Falco thought. It should be less than a year. That time your abilities were just manifesting, they were in no way as powerful as now. You should be able to bring him back faster, Gustav voiced in response. How? I've tried everything. Falco's hand turned shaky as he stretched the right forward. You haven't tried everything, Gustav said while shooting Falco a knowing glance. Falco's eyes widened in realization. I am not trying that. I am never trying that. He yelled in fear. What is it? Everyone was still confused, even if they had a little grasp on the current predicament. Dark Falco said you'll become someone else if you were to transition completely, and was against it at the time, but it is your power after all. You don't have to accept it completely. Maybe you can tap enough from it to bring Dark Falco back, Gustav voiced lengthily. No, I am never going to accept the crown. Falco yelled while holding his head as he recalled all that had happened in his nightmare prior to this. Maybe this too isn't real. You're fake, right? You are showing me another nightmare, ha ha ha, you psycho. I want. Falco voiced like he was deranged while standing up and grabbing Gustav. You're not the real Gustav, are you? Who? Stop it, Gustav said while grabbing Falco's hands. I'm still in a nightmare. What's next, huh? Ha ha ha, I want accept the crown. I want accept it. I want accept. I want accept it. Ah. Falco kept screaming and pushing Gustav forward. Everyone had jumped to their feet at this point. Dash, Falco, calm down. Dash, it isn't a nightmare. Dash, he's only trying to help. Dash, this is real. I want accept it. Don't you dare hurt my friends. Falco began screaming and crying at the same time. Okay, Falco, it's fine. You do not have to accept it, Gustav said while tapping on Falco's arms gently. Falco paused as he heard that and began letting out heavy breaths. I can't just... Tears began rolling out of his eyes once more. The situation seemed dire than expected since this was something that weighed heavy on Falco's mental state. I think you should take a look at Panda's novel. Kamanji moved forward to console Falco again and get him to clam down. Almost eerie one assisted in getting him into his room to rest. Gustav stayed back with a couple others. They all had disturbed expressions on their faces. Big brother, we need to talk, Endrik voiced after approaching Gustav. Panda's novel Comfy moved out of the accommodation area to the passageway so as to discuss privately. What is it? Gustav inquired. Falco, the instant Endrik mentioned his name, Gustav let out a sigh that depicted he knew this was what the conversation was going to be about. He is a threat, Endrik added. He is a friend, Gustav stated. A friend who is a threat to your well-being as well as that of the others, Endrik said with a strong tone. I can handle myself, and he hasn't done anything that makes him a threat yet, so there is no reason to see him as one. Yet, Gustav responded. You're letting your emotional attachments blind your logical sense of reasoning. I know you saw something that everyone didn't, and you know more than we do, and am very sure that whatever you saw doesn't paint him in a very positive light. Yet, you don't see him as a threat because of your emotions, Endrik pointed out with a strong tone once more. Stop it. You don't know Falco. He has the best interests of the people he loves in his heart. That is enough to give him the benefit of the doubt. Like I said, he hasn't done any wrong, Gustav stated. Yet. He hasn't done any wrong yet. Are you going to wait till he puts everyone at risk before considering him to be a threat? Chapter 1241. This other individual happened to also be transparent-skinned but okayed comparably younger. He acquired the trinket from the older individual and put it on one of his fingers. Make sure you don't activate it until you have your target before you. It wasn't easy to acquire this, Sherman stated. Thank you, Master Sherman. Now I can finally take revenge for my brother, the younger individual voiced. One more thing, you can only use it once, so pick your target carefully, Sherman instructed. What? Just one? But there's two of them, the younger individual said with a tone of dissatisfaction. You will have to pick one of them. You can't use it twice, Sherman shook his head. But Master Sherman, can't you just get another one? I want to take them both out, the younger individual voiced once more. Did you miss the part where I mentioned that I went to great lengths to get this? You can only pick one target, and that is it, Sherman elucidated with a strong tone of warning. Asterisks I asterisk right then. I'll pick the one directly responsible for his condition. The younger individual finally gave in with a slightly defeated expression. It's better not to be too covetous if we wish to get sway with it and avoid getting a capital punishment. Take caution, Orimon, Sherman said. Yes, Master Sherman. How is my brother? Orimon questioned. As you know, we're having trouble reversing the state of his cells, which have been rapidly sped up due to the damage from the attack of the Earthling. Master Sherman responded. That Earthling will pay. Orimon voiced, his tone seething with rage. I believe there was interference from the High Order. Within a dark vicinity, a group of 20 clad in bandage-like wares that covered the entirety of their bodies stood in a circle. Their eyes was like a swirling abyss of darkness as black mist erupted from their beings while they discussed. Who would dare interfere, especially when this is a sacred mission? The captain voiced with a tone of suspiciousness. Thissa, a pair of eyes were formed in their midst from the dark mist circulating the environment. Prime Vessel G, we were just about to contact you. The captain voiced with a respectful tone while everyone bowed their heads. About the interference and slight breach into this plane, right? A loud voice boomed from their midst, spreading across the vicinity. Yes, Prime Vessel G, the captain answered. That was the doing of our Lord. He did it because of the kid, Prime Vessel G stated. Their eyes widened as they heard it. We had thought it was an interference from another Prime Vessel. We apologize for we had no idea it was the Lord. The captain knelt along with everyone else. The confusion is understandable. Even I never expected the Lord to try such, almost jeopardizing. Ahem. Anyways, the Lord obviously has a special fondness for this one. Make sure he doesn't come to any harm till you leave this plane, Prime Vessel G instructed. But you said to kill him if he doesn't accept the crown before this competition comes to an end. I know what I said. This is my new decision. If you don't want our souls to be tortured for eternity at the hands of the Lord, Prime Vessel G voiced. I understand, the captain stated in response. Any new information on the outworldly yet? Prime Vessel G questioned. It is the same as what I mentioned the last time. I should be able to draw conclusions from the next couple major challenges, the captain responded. Then make sure you do not contact me till then. After saying this, the pair of eyes formed from mist dissipated. After dissipating, the figures slowly stood back to their feet, bearing similar expressions. Our Lord has a favorite? The day went by very quickly, and soon the night before the next major challenge arrived. Earth participants were gathered in the main room of their accommodation area, discussing on the coming major challenge. Like I said, since it is related to versus battles, I won't send any of you out unless I am sure you can't defeat the opposition paired with us. However, if the versus challenge has a different mode to it, we really can't tell who will be paired with who, Gustav voiced in concern. That is true. The pairing system could be random and end up not favoring us, Eldris chimed. This is the worst time to have main team member replacement. I do not have much faith in a substitute, Gustav voiced. Yeah man, he really seems like a strong guy, E added. No, he didn't train with us. He is unaware of our fighting methods. If we were to move as a group, there are many factors to consider. Gustav shook his head. You didn't train with us, dimwit. What are you on? Fildhor yelled from the side. He has a point, Teamy shrugged. More than half of the team have joined me on one MBO mission or the other. I didn't need to train with you guys. I already understand what working as a team is. I can't say the same for him, Gustav explained with a calm tone. Guys, it's fine. I'm joined enough to participate in the challenge. Falco's voice was suddenly heard from the other end. Everyone watched Falco step out from his room with expressions of pity. No, Falco, you're sitting this one out. Gustav shook his head. I want to help now more than ever. I can't let you guys go off with an inadequate substitute, Falco argued. We'll be okay. You need to rest, Eldris said with a smile. I'm fine really, Falco smiled back while raising his hands. I have made my decision, Falco, and everyone stands by it. You're sitting this one out. If you're deemed to be in top condition after this challenge, then I can consider letting you join the next one. If not, you'll keep sitting them out till you're all good, Gustav stated with a strong tone that left no room for argument. But, you guys are really unbelievable. Do you not believe in my capabilities anymore? Falco took a step back as he suddenly felt stigmatized. That's not it, Falco. We just want you to be fine. Angie stood up while speaking with a soft tone. Falco moved to the side and walked out of the gathering with an expression of betrayal. Falco, everyone called out, but to no avail. "He'll go after him," Angie said while moving out of the gathering as well. "Should we just let him participate?" "I don't like seeing Falco get upset," Timmy voiced from the side. Gustav shook his head. Him reacting this way is proof that he needs to truly sit it out. He just wants to participate because he doesn't want to seem unreliable to us. Completely ignoring his current state won't make it disappear. Gustav's response caused everyone to simmer down for a moment. "Have you decided on the substitute to pick?" Ildris questioned. "Will it be Wong?" Yi asked as well. "No, this time I have someone else in mind. She shouldn't do too bad, I think." Gustav responded with a look of contemplation. "She?" Fildhor muttered with a tone of suspiciousness. "Yes, she." "Yihiko, you can come in," Gustav called out. "Huh." In the next instant, everyone turned towards the entrance to stare at the figure that had just arrived. Their jaws nearly dropped as they stared at one of the most breathtaking beauties they had ever seen in their lives. She looked like a real-life doll with an extremely enchanting heart-shaped face and slanted eyes. Her body was the true depiction of perfection as her curvy hips swayed from side to side while she walked in. Her lustrous black hair cascaded down her back like beautiful waves as her full pink lips pouted nervously. "See, Captain Gustav," she voiced out with sexiest tone they had ever heard in their lives. "I don't recognize her from the ship," Timmy thought, but then realized that with their numbers it would be easy for her to be hidden amongst the crowd of substitutes who were even higher than main team members. Out of everyone here, only 3 people recognized her: Indrik, Matilda, and Ildris. Ildris had senses recalled her exact appearance from the spacecraft on their way here, while Indrik and Matilda remembered her from school. "I didn't even know she was one of the substitutes," Matilda voiced with a low tone. "Hello, Matilda." "Hello, Indrik." Yihiko avoided making eye contact as she greeted them. "What, do you guys know each other before?" Yi questioned with a look of surprise. "That doesn't matter." Gustav cut in before any one of them could respond. "Yihiko will be joining us for the next major challenge. You guys can try to get accustomed to her and ask her questions if you want," Gustav said before standing to his feet. He'll add an illustration of Gustav in MBO outfit as a paragraph comment. "If you want to see more illustrations, you can join my Discord channel, Discord. GG/RNVCAJY9. Chapter 1242, The Versus Battle Challenge. Yihiko will be joining us for the next major challenge. You guys can try to get accustomed to her and ask her questions if you want," Gustav said before standing to his feet. "She is damn hot." This thought was running through a number of the boys' minds as they stared at her. Matilda was all too familiar with the gazes of some of the male teammates here and roll her eyes at them. If only they knew, she thought before walking towards her bedroom. Indrik stood to his feet as well and followed after Gustav. He had never been the type to concern himself about a girl's look. The last thing on his mind was a girl right now. "Are you finally going to tell me, or what?" Gustav voiced as he paused his movement in the passageway. Indrik paused his footsteps as Gustav's back remained turned to him. He was silent for a few before speaking. "It is a sensitive issue since we suspect it is related to that. That is why I cannot speak freely on this matter," Indrik stated. "Now you're like the system, choosing to withhold information from me." Gustav was instantly able to tell what Indrik was hinting at. "That's not it. I will reveal more when I am sure of my assumptions, which is why I said to watch out for Falco," Indrik voiced while stretching his hand forward in the direction of Gustav's shoulder. "If you're not going to say anything, then don't say anything," Gustav stated before walking away without turning around. Indrik's hand paused in mid-air as he stared at Gustav's departing figure with a conflicted expression. He let out a heavy sigh before turning around. The next day arrived very quickly. At this time, both the citizens of the planet Osius as well as all the guests gathered from across galaxies had gathered in the arena. The ISOP participants were currently in their waiting quarters as the time of the next challenge drew closer. The arena was currently undergoing a change that had everyone's faces brimming with interest as well as astonishment. The grounds were getting covered in a layer of gold that spread all across the area, which was well over 100,000 feet radius. Unlike the time of other challenges that occurred on the 9th disk, within this area, the vicinity wasn't expanding in size. It would seem that the next challenge did not require it to be outrageously massive. As the grounds turned completely gold, purplish-plated layers suddenly began to extend it in certain area. Thus purplish-plated areas elevated, forming stages that covered radiuses of 5,000 feet each. Each purplish-plated layered platform was at least 100 feet away from the next, and by the time they had finished appearing all over the arena, there was up to 150 of them. At this point, everyone was well aware that these were battle stages. The challenge being versus battle made it quite obvious. However, they didn't realize that this wasn't the end. After the stages had been formed, different kinds of structures began to appear on them. Some of them started forming streets with buildings on them. Some formed a forestry kind of area with beautiful terrains. On some, very weird terrains with active volcanic mountains had been formed. Whoa, these stages weren't just stages anymore. They were practically locations at this point. Each stage being over 5 times larger than a football field made it so that it was possible for them to contain natural environments. After the stages had turned to natural environments stationed for battles, beams shot down from the sky upon every one of them. Zia, 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 a dome of sorts instantly appeared all around the terrains that these stages had formed. This, of course, was to make sure any battle that happened with any of the stages would not disturb the spectators or others in the surrounding stages. Thaya, when it was finally time for the challenge to begin, the podium where Handler 1 was stationed began to elevate. Hello once again, everyone. He began speaking as the floating screens above displayed the different battle stages, well as a design that showed the name of the challenge. As mentioned earlier, today's challenge is a versus battle challenge. Let us welcome the participants to the arena first of all, he declared, causing the participants to walk out of their waiting rooms in droves. Although the arena was very much packed due to the stages that housed multiple terrains, there was still enough space for the participants to move in between. Cheers, cheers, dash ya. Dash earth, 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 earth. Dash draconets, 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 draconets. Dash Indulus prime. We are the greatest. Dash Ozus tupo, Ozus tup. The spectators went bonkers cheering in support for their respective planets. Thyan, 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 Thyan. In the midst of the cheers, glowing numbers began to appear above the heads of every participant on the arena like a holographic display. Huh. You have some number on your head, Glade said to Timmy. You have it too, Timmy responded. I think we all do, Angie voiced while looking around with a confused expression. Dash, what are these numbers? Everyone instantly became curious upon the appearance of the numbers. It would have been easy to figure out if everyone had the same numbers. However, the numbers varied. Some participants happened to have way higher numbers than others. I shall now explain the versus battle challenge in detail, Handler 1 stated, causing the arena to quieten. The numbers hovering above each one of you displays your points for the current challenge. I believe you lots are wondering why everyone has a different point. Well, that's because the points happen to have been extracted from each planet total accumulation since ISOP began. Gasp, whoa, wah. The spectators had different reactions upon hearing this, and the arena soon turned noisy again, but Handler 1 continued. The points each planet has gathered since the start have been unequally shared amongst teammates. Our systems have randomly shared these points, which is why some teammates have way lesser than the others. The combined number of points displayed above the heads of teammates still remains equal to the total number of points that the group has gathered since the start of the competition. However, with the setting of the versus battle, this could change. The crowd went up in a frenzy again as Handler 1 continued to explain. You have 1,000 points. I wonder what this means, Angie said to Gustav. I guess we're about to find out, Gustav responded while staring at the 5,050 points, hovering above Angie. He had made a quick calculation of how many points it amounted to after tallying the numbers hovering above everyone and confirmed that truly it was the number of points they had gathered since the start. He was surprisingly given the lowest points out of everyone. Upon the system's generation of 150 participants from different planets, each of them would head to the respective battle location and pick a planet to face. After picking the planet, they'd have the chance to pick an opponent as well from that planet. This is where the points come into play. Handler 1 went on to mention that if a participant picked an opponent from the group of 20 who had a lesser number of points than them, the opponent would have no choice but to agree to the battle and move to the battle location. However, if the participant picked an individual who had a higher point than they did, the selected opposition could choose to decline battling them. Then they'd have to pick someone else till their next turn. If after being picked, you lose to your opponent, 500 points will be deducted from you and added to your opponent. If you have less than 500 points, you will incur a minus, which will of course be debited from the rest of your teammates. Handler 1 kept explaining. A participant with an higher point can decline battling another participant with lower points 3 times. At the 4th decline, the computerized artificial intelligence will deduct a random number of points and add it to the opposing participant who issued the battle. At this point, the arena was very loud. The versus battle was really going to be more intense than they anticipated. It was practically a point-stealing challenge, since participants who get picked to choose their opponents could pick someone that they were sure they could defeat. To top it off, a participant couldn't refuse if their points were lesser. The ones with higher points really had more advantages. The captains didn't even have the power to choose who to send out or anything like that. The only thing that offered a medium of protection against more powerful opponents was points. So long as they had higher points, they could protect themselves from stronger opponents. This will be much more interesting than I expected. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he muttered. Chapter 1243. This will be much more interesting than I expected. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he muttered. Although he had the lowest point accredited to him amongst all of his teammates, this point was still considered pretty high generally, since the planetary groups each had different points they had acquired since the start of ISOP. She just happens to have the highest number of points, Gustav voiced while staring at Yuhiko, who had the number 8,300 floating above her head. Should we be worried? Adries questioned from the side. No, she can handle herself, except she gets challenged by the more powerful participants from stronger planets. Also, she has higher points than almost everyone, so it's quite beneficial since she can turn down fights from stronger oppositions, Gustav voiced without a tone of worry. Lastly, the deduction of points vary based on participants. Handler 1 happened to still be explaining. Gustav's eyebrows furrowed as he heard this. 500 points is the minimum amount deducted after a loss. However, if the participant who lost has up to 1,500 points, then the deduction will be higher. As Handler 1 got to this point, the details were displayed on the floating screens above. 1,500 points equals 600 points deduction, 2,000 points equals 700 points deduction, 2,500 points equals 800 points deduction, 3,000 points equals 900 points deduction, 3,500 points equals 1,000 points deduction, 4,000 points equals 1,100 points deduction. The points deduction kept rising till it reached 10,000, displaying the number of points that would be deducted if a participant with that amount of point loses to an opponent. This is not good. Gustav's eyebrows furrowed even more. Now there will be more reason to target those with higher points, Eldris voiced with a concerned tone. While Eldris and Gustav was concerned about this, a lot of other participants were peachy about this new announcement and began looking around for a target. It was unknown who would be picked for the first batch, but there was no doubt that everyone would get a turn, so it was best to set their sights on someone they knew they could beat and also acquire a good number of points from. Yuhiko, Gustav called out. Captain Crimson? She voiced with a respectful and shy look as she turned around. Pandas novel do not accept any challenge unless I tell you to, no matter what you think or how many points you lose, except it's unavoidable like another participant having a higher number of points than you, Gustav voiced with a cautionary tone. Understood, Yuhiko answered with a tone of total obedience. It is unlikely you'll get challenged by anyone with higher points since only a single participant has higher points than you do. Anyway, even if you feel you can defeat a challenging participant, do not accept unless I ask you to, Gustav elucidated once more. Yuhiko nodded meekly in response, causing the males around to stare with blissful expressions. I wish she'd act this way with me. More than one of them bore this thought in mind. She sure has become quite humble compared to what I remember, Matilda voiced from the side. That is only because of the person my big brother is right now. It is normal for people to try to bootlick him to get in his good graces, Indrik chipped in from the side. But she seems to have changed. Shouldn't we at least give her the benefit of the doubt? Matilda said with a contemplative expression. That's for my brother to decide. We didn't experience what he did at her hands, and don't be fooled by appearances. People don't easily change, Indrik concluded with a look of disapproval. He still hated himself for what he made his brother go through all those years, just as much as he hated the others who were included in Gustav's torment as well. Yuhiko included. Handler 1 mentioned a few more things and highlighted some already mentioned information before finally declaring the start of the next challenge. The Versus Challenge shall now commence. The participants were told to move to a part of the arena as they waited for the computerized artificial intelligence system to pick out the first batch of 150 participants. Three groups sat together waiting as digital images of hundreds of the participants were run through on the screens floating above. Thyan. Participants' names and faces began to line up one after the other as the system picked out the first batch. Yes. In one of the first, I think you should take a look at Panda's novel. I see myself up there, haha. I'm going in. I know who to challenge first. Multiple participants' voices laced with excitement and vigor could be heard all over. Captain, it looks like I'm going first. On the side of the Klaxosapes, one of them with a brownish rocky figure voiced as he stood to his feet. Who should I pick? He proceeded to question. Anyone you can defeat. Squash them. The captain of the Klaxosapes gave his team member full authority to pick who he wanted to fight. AKTI hum save itu nim, the team member voiced with a tone of respect before heading forward. The participants that were picked had the location they'd be battling tagged to their names and pictures up there. This made it easy for them to head to their various battle stages. After arriving within his battle stage, which was a location with a stream and multiple seamounts scattered across, the Klaxosape proceeded to head to the middle. The computerized screen before him displayed the different planets he could pick to challenge. He proceeded to scroll through them and tap on the planet he had interest in. The members were displayed before him, along with their various points. A chuckling expression appeared on his rocky face as he stared at the person with the highest number of points. Corgi of planet Klaxosape has challenged FV12 of planet Fixic. Dokwasal of planet Kindle has challenged Cletaville of planet Torque. Different challenges began appearing on the screens above as the 150 participants picked their opponents. Planet Klaxosape, Corgi vs. FV12, Planet Fixic, Planet Sill, Triwendy Tarbolt vs. Ceruto Ols, Planet Foridal, Planet Kindlehuz, Dokwasal vs. Cletaville, Planet Torque. 4 participants with lesser points that were challenged. They had no choice but to move on to the required stage to battle the opponent who picked them, while those with higher points contemplated whether or not to accept the challenge they had been issued. The whole arena erupted into loud cheers and dialogues of excitement as the Versus Challenge kicked off. With the number of participants currently battling, it was impossible to watch every single one of them, so spectators stuck to their fellow species participating or another participant they found interest in. Minutes later, the sounds of blasts and collisions continuously rang out as participants faced each other. The Versus Challenge had a no-hold-bars battle, so anyone could fight as they pleased without holding back. There were handlers who were set to swoop in and declare the loss of a participant if their opponent unleashed an inescapable attack that would deal fatal damage. Within one of the stages where the environment happened to be a forestry type, an individual with glowing red markings all over her body could be seen leaving the stage. It had only been a few minutes, yet she had already defeated her opponents. It is finally our time to shine. This individual who happened to possess a double shoe-shaped head and rhombus white eyes voiced with delight. Ofener, Planet Ruz, wins, 500 points attained. The screens showed a playback of her battle with her opponent which had ended with just 3 hits. Ofener had moved very swiftly. The instant the battle began, dealing a strike on her opponent's back before they could realize what was going on. The moment she did, the red markings appeared on her body and she moved even faster, delivering a fiercer blow the next time. Her opponent was a team member from the planet VA who had performed really good since ISOP began, so they weren't weak. She just happened to have dealt damage too high and quickly before they were able to retaliate, which brought about her win. Watch out for those ones if they ever challenge you. They're battle freaks, Gustav voiced to his teammates. Planet Ruz hadn't done very well since ISOP, began due to not specializing in anything beyond battle. Since not every Aesop challenge was battle-oriented, it was expected that they wouldn't perform their best there, but now, the perfect opportunity had presented itself. Bang, 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 bang. One another of the floating screens, a participant who was shaped like a humanoid bug was continuously getting smashed into a mountain. As his face planted into a side of a mountain, he would be aggressively pulled out and smashed into another before he could retaliate. Corgi, Planet Klaxosape, wins, 600 points attained. I don't need to tell you guys how physically strong the Klaxosapes are, Gustav voiced as they stared at the screens. Chapter 1244 Earth's First Challenge. I don't need to tell you guys how physically strong the Klaxosapes are, Gustav voiced as they stared at the screens. But strength is the only thing they have going for them. They'll squash any one of them, Yonda stated from the side. Don't underestimate them just because they only have immense physical strength. They also have very high defense and are not in any way slow. Not to mention that each of them vary in strength. Their captain is an opponent I trust only 3 amongst all of you to be able to deal with, and you, Yonda, are not amongst that 3, Gustav explained with a candid expression. TCH, you overestimate them and underestimate me, Yonda responded with an irritated expression. Do not go against the Klaxosapes unless I tell you to, Gustav stated. Yonda responded by looking away. It was unclear if this was a reaction of agreement or defiance. Gustav overlooked it and kept his eyes on the battles ongoing all across other stages. With perception, he could have a sensory view of all the battles ongoing at the same time, but Gustav still decided to activate God Eyes occasionally. God Eyes have been activated. With God Eyes, he was taking note of the internal strength of participants he found spectacular and comparing them to his teammates. He had initially gauged the strength of planets based on the information he read about them and how they had performed since the start of Aesop. Now gauging individual strengths since this was a versus battle, and wouldn't want any of his teammates taking on participants that they couldn't defeat. As the versus battle challenge continued, more participants who were initially unknown rose to prominence. They hadn't gotten the chance to display their real capabilities due to the initial challenges, but now the spectators could see that they had truly been sleeping on a number of participants. Teverk, Planet Roidenstack, wins, 500 points attained. Yikiwo, Planet Astambid, wins, 500 points attained. Destom, Planet Ezretil, wins, 700 points attained. Gorim, Planet Riz, loses, 500 points deducted. The first batch happened to be very intense as more than 50 participants won as well as lost fights in 20 minutes. Gustav kept pointing out things to take note of to the group as the numbers kept reducing. The battles were so intense that the terrains within the stages were getting destroyed. Fortunately, the environment would repair itself after a fight ended, so there was no doubt that these stages would be reused for the next batch regardless of how much it was destroyed. After another 30 minutes had gone by, only 3 set of participants seemed to remain. At this time, everyone could properly focus on the fights since 3 was a lesser number left. Dash, who do you think is winning between Zia and Rumphold? I'm going with Rumphold even though he's from Planet Ilk. Dash, I'm going with Zia. Planet Thritsta has done well so far. Dash, but they've been fighting for nearly an hour already. Dash, they seem to be evenly matched. The battle between Zia of Planet Thritsta and Rumphold of Ilk seemed to be more interesting to the spectators than the other two. This was mostly because Planet Thritsta happened to be top 100 overall in Aesop, whereas Planet Ilk was ranked around the 400s based on their differences in total points. Yet, Zia and Rumphold had been going at it for nearly an hour without anyone really getting the upper hand. What made this even more interesting was the similarities between both parties. They were both using weapons and dressed like warriors. Zia was a female with completely red skin and blue helmet covering her face. Her skin-tight white jumpsuit-like wear made it so her fluid movements were undiluted as she swung a glowing green blade repeatedly. Thousand searing falls. Rumphold leapt into the air, spinning repeatedly with his red blade swinging forth. The sky suddenly darkened above like a storm was coming, and what appeared next was a rain of thousands upon thousands of red blades. Thianth, Sighing, Zia swung repeatedly with as much strength and speed as she could muster, repeatedly hitting away the hundreds of blades shooting at her. Fwaiyi, Rumphold suddenly appeared behind her while she was busy with this. Swaiwaya, stretching his blade sideways and swinging forward with all of his might, Zia noticed the attack almost too late. She turned to the side to parry, but the instant their blades collided, an insurmountable force rocked her entire being. She only realized that this attack was 10 times more powerful than normal when her entire body was spiraling across the air with blood oozing out of body. Rumphold charged forward and leapt upwards with his blade raised once more. Yaha! He roared as he swung the blade downwards with intensity at the spiraling body. Rumphold, Planet Ilk wins, 700 points attained. The announcement rang loudly, causing cheers to ring out from a particular part of the spectators' area. Gustav didn't even need to say, "I told you so." The look of defeat on the faces of Planet Thritsta team members as their eyes widened was a pleasant enough sight. He didn't really care and was glad that the first batch had finally ended. Not a single Earthling was challenged during this or even picked, so he was already looking forward to the next. The screens above displayed the highlights of the first batch for about a minute before showing the list of all the winners as well as the points they had acquired. In about a minute more, the computerized system had began picking out participants for the next batch. Soon a new set of 150 participants were picked once more, and unsurprisingly, not a single Earth participant could be spotted. However, this time there were a few participants from planets who were top 50, and amongst them was Planet Gundabalt. Gustav recognized the exact participant that had been picked amongst them. The Gundabalts were relatively small-sized in structure. The biggest amongst them was only a little over 3 feet tall, yet they were very powerful. Due to size, no one had noticed the glare that the Gundabalt participant had shot in the direction of the Earthlings, but Gustav spotted it. "Looks like we finally have an opposition." His face nearly broke a smirk as the small structure female with a multicolored hair floating above her head moved towards the stage with streets and multiple high-rise buildings. She wasted no time in heading to the middle to pick out her opponent, and soon enough the beam of light that appeared in the area where Earth's participants were seated confirmed Gustav's theory. "Someone challenged one of us." Angie was the first to voice out as they stared at the person who had been challenged with looks of astonishment. On the side of the Gundabalt, their captain displayed an expression of disbelief as she stood to her feet. "Is Navira stupid? How could she challenge him of all people?" She voiced with a tone of anguish. There is a new feature that lets readers vote for their favorite characters, which will in turn help the character get a proper character art illustration. Go to the front of my books page and vote for your favorite character. I will be adding Miss Amy, Falco, Ildris, Young Joe, Boss Danzo, and so many other characters soon. Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 1245. I did it. Is Navira stupid? How could she challenge him of all people? Gundabalt's captain voiced with a tone of anguish. "Oh, isn't this a sight? We will finally get to see him in a proper 1v1 fight." Multiple voices could be heard from background as an Earth participant slowly made his way towards the middle of the arena. He accepted the challenge. I don't think he could have refused it. They both have 1,000 points. Who do you think will win? The discussions about this particular battle happened to be way more than the others despite the fact that it hadn't began. The dirty blonde-hair Earthling with an extremely enchanting look as well as demeanor calmly made his way to the city-like environment. "I will have to end this as quickly as possible without activating more than 1 or 2 abilities," Gustav thought as he arrived before the stage and slowly took steps upwards. His thought process was due to the fact that he didn't want to display much of his fighting prowess in a 1v1 battle. He didn't want the more powerful opponents taking note of his cards and coming up with ways to counter them in future challenges. Although he knew he had many abilities to juggle and pick from, he still didn't want to spend much time in the stage with this Gundabalt participant. The dome opened up for him, and he walked right through. He casually and nonchalantly strolled in the middle of the streets, towards the 3 feet tall figure up ahead. Her black root-like hair floated above her with reddish tips. She looked like a chibi human with cute cheeks and a warrior-like outfit. Gustav remembered her to be the one he battled against in the river-splitting challenge. While they hadn't battled each other physically, It was still a contest between the two of them, and she lost. I will defeat you and take back my honor, Navira swore with a serious expression, but her cute, high-pitched voice made it difficult to take her seriously. You would have been better off challenging a different person or a different planet altogether, Gustav voiced from up ahead. Although they were hundreds of feet away from each other, she could still hear him clearly. I will wipe that look of confidence off your face, Navira stated as her energy began climbing. Sorry, but I'll be ending this battle very quickly, and I'm afraid you have a 0% chance of winning. Gustav actually felt bad for her. Navira seemed to be a person of strong character, but she had made a wrong choice of challenging Gustav because she wanted to prove she would win in a 1v1 battle. GHRH. We shall see about that. She gritted her teeth before charging forward. Navira Unravel, Planet Gundabalt, versus Gustav Crimson, Planet Earth. Thwoosh, Navira closed the gap between them instantly and leapt into the air while swinging her hand forward. A wall of silver energy pushed forward intensely, following her entire moving frame. Gustav thrusted his right palm forward while maintaining his unbothered expression. Bang! A loud collision rang out as a wave of energy spread forth. Crash, KRRYCHH, conked. The high-rise buildings on the sides quaked intensely as cracks appeared all over them and glass rained from the sky due to the panes getting blasted open. The silver wall that had slammed into Gustav's palm did not even manage to successfully push him back in the slightest, causing Navira's face to scrunch up in disbelief. Gustav clenched the silver wall, which looked like a wave that had covered the entirety of the street. KRRYCHHH. Cracks appeared all over it as it blasted into smithereens in the next instant. Gustav reached out and grabbed Navira's wrist before turning around with intense speed and flinging her forward. Ugh! Navira groaned as her figure instantly arrived before one of the buildings up ahead. She pushed her palm forward, blasting a massive hole through the building as her figure catapulted through it. Although Gustav's counter had been faster than she could handle, she managed to stabilize herself quickly and blasted holes through the building instead of crashing into it with her body. Bang! 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 She continuously blasted through the walls within the high-rise building as her body kept speeding forward with intensity. Bang! The instant she blasted through the last wall that would give her access out of the building, she spotted a figure floating in midair right after the wall like he had been waiting for her. Repressio! She screamed out while trying to activate an attack very quickly, but unfortunately, Swayii, the figure had already moved. You need to go to sleep now, Gustav voiced with a calm expression, but the fist that he drove into Navira's gut was quite the opposite of calm. I think you should take a look at Boom. It sounded like an explosion had gone off as Navira felt like the force of a moving planet slammed vigorously onto her entire being. Bleergurg, a trail of blue blood was left across the air as her body blasted shot backwards with intense speed. Bang! 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 Her figure blasted through several buildings this time, crashing from wall to wall and creating holes within them. I hope that wasn't too much, Gustav muttered as he slowly dropped his hand. The force behind this punch was several times weaker compared to when he punched Captain Strum, but he knew well that they had quite the difference in strength, which was why he held back for Navira. He only hoped that this wouldn't be too much for her. Hover has been deactivated. His figure descended from above, and he proceeded to land in the middle of the street. Fly Gustav could hear the sound of the handlers flying into the stage to check on Navira, who had the last building collapse onto her after she crashed into it. The announcement for his win was supposed to have gone off by now, but they needed to confirm her status first. Gustav nonchalantly dusted his wares and turned around to head to the point where he had entered the dome from. He was close to reaching the entry point when the entire vicinity suddenly began quaking intensely. I am not finished, Gustav Crimson. A loud and aggrieved scream was heard as the grounds suddenly ruptured. Gustav exclaimed as the grounds in the entire vicinity crumbled, causing him to start falling. He looked up and could see all the high-rise buildings floating into the air. Oh! Gustav exclaimed as he noticed Navira hundreds of feet northwards, floating in the air with her entire figure drenched in her own blood. Her eyes glowed intensely with her arms spread sideways as a silver energy emitted from her being was wrapped around the hundreds of high-rise buildings floating above the ground. GRRRHHHH. GRRRVVVV. GRRRHHHH. GRRRVVVV. Before anyone could understand what was happening, these buildings, which numbered in around 300, floated towards Gustav's position and began descending. Bang, 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 boom. Loud and continuous crashes that sounded similar to earthquakes reverberated across the arena as these buildings fell intensely onto Gustav. Debris and rocks blasted across the vicinity as the crashes continued for the next minute until Gustav's being was completely buried underneath. Huff, 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 huff. Navira breathed heavily as her blood-soaked figure descended from the air. The entire vicinity had been completely desecrated from her ability, and she was also worn out as well as injured. However, a feeling of gratification welled from within as she smiled amidst the fatigue. "I did it," she voiced. "No, you didn't." A familiar voice resounded behind her, causing a chill to run down her entire body. The instant she turned around, a kick was already inches away from her face. Bang! The sole of Gustav's feet crashed into her face with force, causing the already destroyed stage to cave even more as she shot across the air, bleeding even more intensely than before. All Navira felt was a high-pitched sound go off in her head before it forcefully turned light out. Bang! Her figure slammed into the other end of the dome and slowly slid down across it as she completely passed out. "You weren't fast enough," Gustav muttered with a slightly pitiful look. However, he knew that he would barely be affected by her attack even if he had gotten caught in it. The handlers who had initially paused their interference earlier swooped down as quickly as they could to give Navira medical attention. Gustav dusted his skin-tight outfit once more as he began to make his way out of the stage. Gustav, Planet Earth, wins, 500 points attained. The screens above showed playback of specific parts of Gustav and Navira's battle. The part that left a lot of spectators curious as to how Gustav was unscathed was also showed in slow motion for the weaker spectators who couldn't figure out what happened. It showed Gustav placing a small circular item on his forehead the moment the ground around him got destroyed and he began falling. There is a new feature that lets readers vote for their favorite characters, which will in turn help the character get a proper character art illustration. Go to the front of my books page and vote for your favorite character. I will be adding Boss Danzo and other characters soon. More votes determine how fast a character will get illustrated. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.